Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right. How you doing? Yeah. Let's go. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Tuesday, December 9th. 342 days into the new year. We only got 23 days left. Live from the truthfunders.com studios right here. Downtown Burbank, California. Truthfunders.com, the #1 crowdfunding platform for paranormal films, research, expeditions, and inventions of the unknown. Truthfunders.com. Let's go over to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the truthfunders.com banner right there, head over, sign up. We're kicking things off in about... Oh, man, we're about 10 days away. Oh, yeah, maybe less. So go sign up at truthfunders.com. For KJCR, the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your so humble host, Jimmy Church. Welcome to everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, the UK, Netherlands, Germany, South America, all around the world. Welcome to Fade to Black. Big salute to the proud men and women in uniform, and I will say this all month long. This is the holiday season. There's a time you need to stop, pause, and thank. It's right now. Defending our right to do this show. That's right. So many things are going on right now with Fade to Black. So excited. Of course, we have truthfunders.com. We have the podcast. We have the new website. We have faders.org. We have Hangar One kicking off in a month. That's going to be great. Looking forward to that. We've got some stuff. We've got some stuff going on. We really do. We were talking before the show, little meeting. There are so many things in play. There are the things that you know about, and there's the things that you don't. It's my evil laugh. But I am ready. Are you guys ready? Twitter ready? Email. Tonight, Robert Morningstar will be with us at the bottom of the hour. And Robert said to me today, hey, Jimmy, man, can we take some calls? I'm like, you know we can take some calls, Robert. I want to take some calls, man. Let's do it. Love it when a guest says, let's take some calls. So we will be doing that. The call-in number 323-825-5045. We'll do that in the third segment of the show. Excited. Tonight, Robert Morningstar. We're going to cover a lot of different things, but he's done some analysis on the Roswell objects that we posted at jimmychurchradio.com. If you haven't seen it, go over to the website. We have 3 images posted, and Robert has done some analysis. Not only that, but we've also sent him some super high-res images, and he will continue his analysis. I'm excited to hear about what he has got to say and what he has found out. And there's everything out. You know, Robert is the hub. He's the hub of all things ufology and paranormal. Everything seems to filter through Roberts. It's pretty crazy. And so tonight we're going to talk about not only some of his research into different sightings around the world. He's got some really cool stuff on Dyatlov Pass, the Iranian F-4 Phantom encounter. We can talk about that, but also the connections into JFK and his frame-by-frame analysis of all the films that are involved with the JFK assassination. There's so many things that we're going to talk about tonight with Robert, and I am fired up about it. Tomorrow night, Laird Scranton. Oh, yeah, the Dogan. He can read hieroglyphics, I think. Sumerian text. Tomorrow night, Laird Scranton, fired up about that. Email throughout the show tonight is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. We switched over servers, changed everything over the last week. Today was the first day that email was perfect. So if you want to email tonight, it is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can also go over to the contact page. You can email me there. Just get it through the producers. Make it good. Hey, Dave Matherly just checked in. And I will just say this, Dave, you sent me a pretty interesting guest request today. And I'm going to let you know I checked that out. So I'm doing this publicly right now, Dave. Send me another email and tell me why that particular guest. Okay, I want to know why. Because it was interesting. And I dug it, Dave. So I need you to tell me why. All right. I'm ready. I'm fired up, man. Robert Morningstar is going to hang with us tonight here in the house with the Fade or Not family. It's going to be awesome. Let me get to some email. A couple of normal things. If you have any questions, Les just posted on hashtag F2BQ. You want to know about Truth Funders? Well, I just did that. But if you have any questions directly in TweetDeck, hashtag F2BQ, you can do that. Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio, hashtag DMRadioNet. That gets you into the sandbox. Come hang out with us. I just spoke to Dave Matherly. Just like that, boom, he just responded back. Certainly. All right, let's see. Let's just move on down the line. Posted on Facebook, I got this message from Natalie Taylor via England, UK. And she said, I just wanted to say you've made our miserable, cold, wet evenings much more bearable over here. We found your show a few months back on the Dark Matter Radio Network and now cozy up at night listening to it. With so many paranormal shows out there, it's so refreshing to find one that feels just right. Sounds like I wrote that. It does, but I didn't. It comes from Natalie Taylor over in the UK. Got an email today, very interesting one from our good friend Michael Anderson. And I see that he's tweeting right now. So here you go. Twitter light up. It's from Michael. He says, so here is my prediction for what is going to become of the current release of CIA torture docs. It would be nice if you mention this on the air because I'm right. If I'm right, it will wake a lot of people up. Unfortunately, people who listen to Faded Black are already open to the charade. Around this weekend or no later than Xmas, something big is going to happen that will be a false flag. It's going to be something that is going to need CIA involvement. This will be a false flag created by the CIA to show their need for a budget and existence. I'm predicting that nobody will get hurt, but a big plot to hurt Americans will be thwarted by the CIA. It will be orchestrated in such a grand manner that it will be glued to all media outlets. Now, the CIA can't work on American soil. I might be wrong about this, but this time they will be involved on all American soil. Interesting. Making it that much more close to home. Interesting email. Sounds like Anderson's trying to be Teeter and might be doing a damn fine job. Let's hope not. Let's just hope not. Let's hope the false flag gets thwarted. Wouldn't that be funny? Another email from Renee. She says, and I thought about this too, you might lose part of the male portion of your audience for 1 hour tonight. Fade to Black is on simultaneously with the CBS's Victoria's Secret Fashion Show. She says, I watch it every year, and we'll have it on with the sound down. And I respond back to that with, Dish Network has canceled CBS. So some of us will be not worrying about it. But yeah, is anybody going to be watching that tonight in the background while you're listening to this? That's a good combination. That's a simulcast. Deborah Cox wrote, another one bites the dust. A 52-year-old Belgian Gert Tack, that's his name, Gertz Tack, a private banker for ING, I-N-G, who managed portfolios for wealthy individuals. And on December 3rd, his body was found on the coast of Ostend, Belgium. He is the 36th dead banker of the year. Now, I have the list. It's too long to read. I have talked about this all year long as this has just continued to grow and compile. But there's something going on, isn't there? When I looked at the list, it's weird because it's global. And what I mean by that is there are bankers in New York, in Los Angeles, all across the United States, all across Europe that are dying in very strange ways. This guy, Dirk Tack, just floated up on the shores there, pulled from the water. And nobody knows how he got there and how it happened. It's been 6 days. It's pretty interesting. I don't know what I did try to look at is banker deaths for 2013. It's kind of a weird Google search, by the way. And I tried to look at banker deaths for 2012. Is there more happening this year than ever? And equate it to something like this. Boat and plane disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. Is there more going on there than, say, any other body of water around the world? Or is it just an average? Or is it just what happens? So the banker deaths that are occurring right now, is it out of whack than any other year? Or is it the type of deaths that are strange? A lot of suicides, a lot of just weird ways to die with these guys. Or is it just normal? Is it one of those, how do I say this correctly? One of those pitfalls to being a banker that you're going to maybe not live as long as everybody else for whatever reason. Could be natural causes. But it is strange, and the list is long. 36 banker deaths in a year? Okay, all right. But 36 strange ones? That's something else altogether. It's very crazy. I am so excited tonight. Is everybody fired up? Robert Morningstar. Oh, I forgot. Hold on. My Twitter question. Where's my Twitter question for the night? Oh, I don't have it. Oh, here it is. For Twitter tonight. Here we are at the end of a year of broadcasting on the Dark Matter Radio Network. What was your favorite show? Tweet it right now at JChurchRadio, hashtag DM Radio Net. What was your favorite show this year? I'd like to know. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Robert Morningstar. I will be back right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, you have tuned into the latest phenomenon in late night talk radio, Fade to Black, starring the inimitable Jimmy Church, showcasing his continuing quest in pursuit of knowledge of the strange and paranormal. Sit back, open your mind, and let's get cracking.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black, the Tuesday edition. Bespoke radio for the masses, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Robert Morningstar. Be joining us at the bottom of the hour. Favorite shows of the year? It's kind of weird. David Icke, I just saw that pop up. A bunch of Linda Moulton Howes have just flown by. Clifford Stone. And a lot of all of them, Jimmy. But Linda Moulton Howes, that because it was just recent. It was good. It was great. Clifford Stone, David Icke, I'm with you. Wilcock, Hancock, Richard Dolan, both times were pretty cool. Robert Schock, don't forget about that. How about Bob Schroeder? Bobby Schroeder. How about Jay Weidner? Both shows were pretty friggin' epic. But Bobby Schroeder sticks out to me. That show, that was one of them. Yeah, Jim Mars, absolutely, Jim Mars. They're all good, and I agree. I agree with that. The one show that just stopped me dead in my tracks was Bobby Schroeder. That was too much. And also David Marler, the Black Triangles. Travis Walton, that was a great show. Both of them, but the first one with Travis was pretty strong. When I asked him, if you remember, was the female E.T. wearing makeup. That was great. Stopped him in his tracks. Yeah, Graham Hancock, I'm watching it. Bassett, Stephen Bassett, both times he was on was really, really good. But a pretty extraordinary year. Yeah, Contact in the Desert. Well, you had to be there. That show was lucky to even happen. That was too much. Yeah, see, yep, I'm with you. Dolan, Hancock, Travis Walton. Well, it was just an amazing year. Why not interview Art Bell? I've asked Art to come on this show so many times. I asked him a couple of weeks ago, actually, in person. Said, Art. Jimmy, nah. I did. I put it right in his ear, too. It's like, nah, he's going to wait till July. So we'll see. All right. Where are we at? Oh, the news. You know, I need to queue up some really cool ABC evening news music. Vladimir Lapunov, a professor at Moscow State University and astrophysicist, says his team has located a huge mountain-sized asteroid whose orbit crosses the Earth's every 3 years. Lapunov says the asteroid is 370 meters in diameter and could hit the Earth with an explosion 1,000 times greater than the surprise 2013 impact of that bus-sized meteor over Chelyabinsk. Remember that last year? You know what I do all the time? I go and I look at the dash cam videos over in Russia. That's what they do because of insurance. Everybody's got a dash cam video. So when that thing flew over, it was on everybody's car. That was crazy to watch. Crazy. The newsroom, look, okay, I'm going to bum everybody out here if you don't know the news. The newsroom, probably the best television drama on air at the moment, my favorite show, is going to end after the season 3 finale this Sunday. 3 seasons. The show is brilliant. Top to bottom. Everything about the show. It's over this Sunday. Now I have to ask the questions. Did Aaron Sorkin run out of steam? I doubt it. Creative ideas? I doubt it. Well, when the newsroom came back for the 3rd season, it seemed like, at least to me, that it was a sign of, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons in front of us. They could write about whatever and keep it going. Aaron Sorkin is brilliant in what he does. But like so many of his shows before, Sports Night, Studio 60 on Sunset Strip, it looks like something went on over at HBO. I don't know what it was. But only those inside HBO and Sorkin himself know the truth. Those two and Sam Waterston. Because when he died at the end of the last episode, I knew then the series was going with him. Sam Waterston was brilliant. Everybody was brilliant. Jeff Daniels. And I couldn't believe it. He just drops dead of a heart attack. And I'm sure that everybody was watching. I hope if you haven't seen the newsroom, just go back to season 1, watch them all back to back. Last year, they only had 9 episodes instead of 10. I think they were supposed to be 12. Whatever, they cut it back. And the same thing happened, it seems, this year. It's like it's too short. But now Newsroom is coming to an end. And I am completely bummed out about that. I didn't think Jeff Daniels was that great of an actor. Everybody on that show rose up and above. Jane Fonda. It was just a really well-written show. And it was something that I went back and watched a couple of interviews with Aaron Sorkin, and it seemed like he was in his element, and this was exactly what he wanted to do. And I'm telling you, I've just spent 5 minutes talking about this, and I am completely bummed. All of the other shows that are on HBO, everything's coming to an end. And there's nothing really left. And it's kind of sad why we're stuck with the comeback or whatever. It's just when you have a quality show like that, something that's actually saying something and that we can all learn something from. I mean, my daughters saw that show and they suddenly wanted to get into journalism. And I thought that was cool. It had that kind of impact. Well, it's all over on Sunday. And I don't know what kind of series finale that they can have, because to me it just ended with Sam Waterston reaching his demise. But here it is, this Sunday. All right, the Sony Pictures, the hack is getting worse. Seems like I've been talking about this every day. The hackers have now posted the Social Security numbers, get this, of Conan O'Brien, Sylvester Stallone, and 47,424 other Sony employees. The hackers have tried extorting Sony executives 3 days before the hack. Among the leaked documents, reporters at Mashable discovered a threatening email to Sony Pictures CEO Michael Linton, Chairman Amy Pascal, and others. Sony employees, different emails and documents have popped up like this, that the Sony employees are fed up with boring, unimaginative movies that they keep producing, like Adam Sandler films. That was according to Gawker. Kind of agree with that one. And the timeline, how it all breaks down. Back in July, the hackers started building malicious software in Korean that could erase computers. They got that malware into Sony Pictures, and it started stealing incredibly large amounts of data. They couldn't slow it down. And then a week before Thanksgiving, they put the finishing touches on the erasing malware and planted it on their computers. It spread from computer to computer, and every time a Sony employee turned on their computer, it forced them into a reboot and erased their hard drives. A week later, November 24th, an illustrated message, which I have seen, by the way, it's pretty creepy. I was going to post it, and I thought, you know what, let's stay away from it. It's pretty creepy. The illustrated message appeared on Sony employees' screens, and hackers called themselves the Guardians of Peace, or the GOP. It looked just like other images that appeared on South Korean banks last year that were, of course, attributed to North Korea. Then on December 5th, Sony Pictures employees received a threatening email warning them your family will be in danger. Then, yesterday, hackers reappeared by posting a public message online demanding that the company censor itself. It warns Sony to stop immediately showing the movie of terrorism, which can break the regional peace and cause the war, end quote. Talking about that movie, The Interview. Quite frankly, I can't wait to see it. All right. I am so fired up. I'm so fired up. Tonight, Robert Morningstar will be joining us. Tomorrow night, Laird Scranton, fired up. I am completely fired up. And let me, hold on. Before we go to the break, what was the last tally here? Man, the show has been running for 20 minutes. I'm up to 526 tweets. So how can you guys got to slow down? You guys got to slow down. I got to scroll all the way back. I wanted to know everybody's favorite shows. The reason why I was asking about that, I want to go and I'm going to grab some clips. Next week is our anniversary week here on Fade to Black. We've got a lot of exciting stuff lined up. And I want to go in. I want to grab some audio from some of your favorite shows. If you do, email me, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can also email WoWo. You know what to do. And let us know what your favorite shows are. And think outside the box, too, just a little bit. Because it's the obvious ones are obvious. But there's so many classic stuff that went down from week to week. Eugene, I did see your tweet, by the way. That was a classic epic show, but it will never be aired again. This is Fade to Black, right here, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. When we come back after the break, Robert Morningstar. Tomorrow night, Laird Scranton. Follow us on Twitter @JChurchRadio, #DMRadioNet. Get over to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Click on TruthFunders.com. Go check it out. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Are you afraid of the dark? Don't move. Don't touch that mouse. You are listening to Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark matter.
Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. Only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. We are bespoke radio for the masses. Shoot me an email right now to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You got anything for Robert Morningstar? Make it good. Get it past the producers here. You can also tweet in hashtag F2BQ. I've already got questions lined up right there. Hey, that's a good one. Ask Robert about the Sony events. Oh, that's good. Yeah, we'll get to that. We will get to that. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. And I believe Robert's tweet is at Rob Morningstar. So you can do that, and we'll see if he's paying attention tonight. And let's do this. I am ready. Robert D. Morningstar is a civilian intelligence analyst and psychotherapist in New York City. He is a graduate of the Power Memorial Academy. Robert was a New York State Regents Scholar at Fordham University, where he received a degree in psychology and participated in the early research and development of artificial intelligence. He's an expert in the Chinese language, history, and martial arts. Robert began flying in 1984 and is an FAA licensed pilot and instrument ground instructor for the past 30 years. He has studied the paranormal and UFOs for over 50 years and has published many research articles on the internet exposing government cover-ups and deception in the JFK assassination, and his work is cited in major books on the assassination, notably Paris Lemond's The Assassination of America and Assassination Science by Professor James Fetzer. Robert is a member of the Secret Space Program Conference and has written extensively to expose the relationship between the CIA, the military-industrial complex, the secret space program, UFOs, and the JFK assassination, virtually guaranteeing a shutdown of the show tonight. He is currently the associate editor of UFO Digest. I would like to warmly welcome to the program Mr. Robert D. Morningstar. Robert, are you with us, sir?
I'm here, Jimmy. Thank you very much for your kind invitation and your kind introduction. And thank you to all those people on Twitter who are tweeting about this event. I greatly appreciate it. I'm thrilled, actually.
Yeah,
yeah.
Twitter is an amazing thing, and it's run with, because we do a parallel with the show. So we'll do 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 tweets a night during the broadcast. And when you watch and you see how many people, how wide the audience is, how smart they are, and you just watch this flow, it is humbling. It is absolutely humbling. Wait till you wake up tomorrow and check out Twitter. You're going to go, man, that was cool. I got to do that again. That was pretty fun.
Yeah. I was very taken by your opening. It's been a long time since I heard that statement. The revolution will not be televised. And we're in the middle of a great American revolution right now. My hopes are up. I think the nation has made the turn toward the light. I think people have just awakened in the last year in particular. So much has happened, and the fact that we're having exposure today both of the CIA torture history and the House Committee, Oversight Committee hearings on the deceptions in Obamacare, all of those things, both those things especially, give me great hope that the people's eyes have been opened to the mass deception that has gone on since JFK was killed.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up that little snippet. That's a British actor. His name is Rhys Ifans. And I don't know if you know Reese, but he, he's in the Harry Potter movies.
Yes, I know who that is.
Yeah, and he's fantastic, and he became a fan of the show. And he lives like in Ibiza. Like he lives off the coast of Spain on an island, or an island next to Ibiza. But anyway, he is all about what we're doing, and he could not wait to do that little drop for the show because he was absolutely, just like you just said, the revolution won't be on television. And he couldn't wait. He did like 3 different takes of it, and he was so fired up. But
that goes back to the 1960s. I thought I was actually hearing an original recording with music on it of it was actually a radio broadcast that was discussing, all the turmoil of the 1960s and the demonstrations and how the media was not showing what was really going on. And some activists came out with that phrase and did a long dissertation on it. It's very memorable.
Yeah, it is. And
you are the revolution. You are the Paul Revere. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I'm with you. And he had to explain.
I'm very happy that people are listening.
Yeah, and he explained to me, Robert, what the statement meant and what it meant to him. And it was very moving for me. So I don't think I'll ever do a broadcast without running that. I think it's so telling and so awesome about what the internet and allows what you do too as well.
Absolutely.
Today, let me share this with everybody. Today, you mentioned to me last week about our Roswell objects and you wanted to get into some research on it, and thank you for it. And so thank you. But today you said, Jimmy, I need the high res stuff. So bing, bing. It's just, that's what the internet can do. There you are, you're in New York, and bam, you've got the high res stuff. And you know what? Before we move forward, what do you, let's stop right there and let's talk about this for a minute because we've got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about tonight. What do you think you're looking at when you look at those Roswell objects?
As a pilot, the curvature of that, the curvature and the edge of that fragment that you have suggests to me the leading edge of a wing, or a flying wing, a flying saucer, a leading edge of any wing plan or wing form. It reminds me of the leading edge. I think it's a chip off the leading edge of a UFO. I mean, I'm taking it at face value. I've seen a lot of photographs of Roswell debris and purported pieces of the Roswell craft, but I have never seen one that was so convincing and so technically complex. That's the thing that struck me. You have 3 views of this object, and one of the things I've been able to do is I've mastered computer photographic enhancement, and as a result, there's one photo that showed a cavity. And when I enhanced that one, and I hope you have it on your website so that people can understand what I'm talking about, I was amazed by the intricacy of the engineering of the inside of that hollow part of the fragment. And the curvature of the outer surface is striated, and of course, I won't use the term honeycomb because I don't see hexagonal or octagonal forms joining, but I see something like lozenge diamond shapes in a series of light stripe, gray stripe, black stripe, light stripe, gray stripe, and it reminds me of the descriptions that Nikola Tesla, he actually had a patent for a flying machine based on electromagnetogravitics, and it involved alternating currents. And if you took Tesla's idea to the highest level in design, that's what I feel I'm looking at in that little fragment that you have. It's interesting that inside the cavity, let's call it the leading edge, there is a perfectly square tube right along the edge, and then there seem to be filaments that I would associate with fiber optics hanging on the inside the cavity, beneath the surface of striated diamond-shaped grills or grill.
Yes.
It's an amazing piece. I have never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything that convinced me so quickly that it's otherworldly, and that it's something that it would be very, very difficult for us to manufacture even today.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And also, one of the things that fascinates me is that it looks like on the broken edges, and you've been able to enlarge the high-res images. When you look at the cracked and broken edges on the top half of some of the, you can see these very fine filaments coming out.
Yes.
And I don't know what that could be, because it's obviously metal. It's silicone. Silica. So what's the difference between silicone, and I understand one is a metal and one isn't.
Silica is a mineral. It's like I would say sort of like a stone. But silicone is a gel that's made. I use silicone gel to seal leaks, join surfaces that have to be waterproof. I know it's complex, but just got to jump into a little chemistry.
Yeah, well, the analysis that we have from the University of New Mexico, it's 99.9% silica. And but what I find fascinating is when you look at some of the broken away edges into the cavities, is obviously gold colored. So how could it be 99%? Or is that just a reflection of light? But in the high-res images, which I'm looking at now, I'm scrolling around, absolutely magnified here. This gold reflection that's happening, and I don't get that when it's 99% something. Then what are these little flakes of what appear to be gold, but I don't know.
Well, silica is the dioxide of silicon occurring naturally as quartz, cristobalite, and tridymite. And I'm reading this as from a definition. It's a refractory and soluble material used in the manufacture of glass, ceramics, and abrasives. Now, there you have Corningware, something like that. Remember?
Yes.
Corningware was that material that made all those wonderful oven
baking devices. Yes,
and also, but Corningware was the nose cone for our early missiles. Corningware was used as a sort of a shield, the nose cone, because it was a very strong. It is a very strong heat-resistant element, and so silica makes sense now.
Yeah, what do you make of in image number 2? And somebody just posted image number 2 in Twitter. So that's the image that I'm talking about. And when you look at, even though this one's not high res, but you can still blow this image up. But at the top of the triangle there, where you can see the edge, and it's a very, in the image that you have, in the high res one, it's perfectly clear, the edge.
Did you send me those?
Yes, I did. Yes.
I haven't opened them up yet.
Okay. Well, you can obviously see what appears to be hair. There's some kind of filaments, and it's
that's what I was talking about as possibly fiber optics. When you read the Roswell reports, the initial reports from the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, and the twinning memo, and the white hot memos, They refer to the marvel that they felt when they went in and saw no moving parts, no wires, but they did find these filaments that eventually turned out to be fiber optic cable.
Right.
And it seems that it's for sensors. This is an intelligent ship in a sense. It's got. Well, artificial intelligence is what we're talking about, really, and where we got that idea, I believe, comes from the recovery of fragments of several crashes, Roswell, Aztec, Kingman in Arizona.
Yeah.
A lot of, I'll tell you honestly, so many UFOs were coming down in that period from 47 to 48 that I suspect at times that the aliens were dumping these intentionally as Trojan horses. That's really seriously my theory about these crash retrievals.
Well, it makes a lot more sense than, traversing the universe and coming here and forgetting how to fly your flying saucer, and just crashing it.
Yeah, Trojan horse. Now, here's why I say that. The idea works like this. These entities know that we are really curious, ingenious, devious little creatures that we want to know what makes the clock tick, and I can tell you that as a kid. I took my father's watch, he left it home, and I opened it up, and all the springs popped out, and I had to put them all back in, and the gears.
It didn't work, though, did it?
No, Dad came home, he put on the watch, he said, what's going on with this watch? It was working perfectly this morning. Well, anyway, that's innate. I was just a kid, I was about 7 years old. But that is an innate trait of human beings and the human mind. And the aliens being, I think they, of course, psychologically, if a person knows what you're thinking, can telepathically understand what you're thinking, they're way ahead of you psychologically. Now, here's how I feel it works. They dump this stuff. They know we're tinkerers. They know we're going to start to mess around with it, try to reverse engineer it, figure out how it works. And in the process, we do figure out how it works. But what they know is that they have an industrial civilization that requires a certain kind of social organization for it to work. And basically what I'm talking about is kind of like an army ant mentality, where you have all the workers, then you have the drones, the majors, and the queen, or wherever she is. So they knew that we would want to know how to make this stuff. But what we didn't know is that in order to make that stuff, we would have to re-engineer and retool our whole society and industrial base and become more like them in order to make the same product that they make. And thereby, we would become more like them. So, do you understand what I mean?
I do.
And then the object itself would alter us and change us. I had a very interesting experience listening to David Sereda, who was on your other show a couple of weeks ago, after I broke the story about Boyd Bushman and his Area 51 experiences and his evidence on C2C. David Sereda, who originally did the interview, was invited on, and he was talking, and he's a brilliant fellow. I really admire his work on many levels. But what he said was really telling. They were talking about artificial intelligence, right? And how, talking about cyborgs and implanting chips in people and achieving artificial intelligence artificially that way. He said, you know what, you people, you don't understand. You are already artificially intelligent. You're already using artificial intelligence. You've got an iPhone, and you take that iPhone, you bring it up to your face and your head, and you're getting that data and that information. That is artificial intelligence. And I said to myself, wow, what a brilliant idea. Everybody's worried about implants, and here I coin words for ideas that haven't been expressed before. So I said, wow, everybody's worrying about implants and RFID chips. That's an explant. What he is talking about is an explant. the chip is outside your body. It's not an implant, but you draw the chip to your head and to your eyes and are accessing. I just accessed Google to find out the precise meaning of silica.
Right.
So we are accessing artificial intelligence already. And there's another form of artificial intelligence, which is artificially enhanced in human intelligence that does not involve a microchip. And that's the kind of thing that I was working on in 1969 and was invited to become a research subject and a research associate in the development of artificial intelligence. But they only told me half the story, you see. This was a project at Fordham University that was funded by the Office of Naval Intelligence and IBM. And I was in a class in human learning with a brilliant teacher who taught me Gestalt psychology and the principles of human learning. And he mentioned that he was doing this experiment in artificial intelligence. Now imagine, 1969, that's the first time I ever heard such an idea. And I said, Professor, what's artificial intelligence? What is the nature of your work? And he said, well, Bob, what I'm doing is I'm doing brain studies, and I'm measuring brain voltages, brain wave functions, and mapping neural networks. And I said, oh, what are neural networks? He said, well, each of your faculties in your brain, your rational thinking, your perceptions, your analytical functions, your mathematical skills, all of these involve certain networks of nerves that work together to create that faculty. So what I want to do is map the brain wave function, the brain voltage, and the neural networks, and then I'm going to take that and put it in a computer program and teach a computer how to think like a human being. And he said, and that's artificial intelligence. And I said, oh, that's amazing. And then he pitched us an offer he couldn't resist. If we volunteered for the research study, we wouldn't have to write the final paper. We wouldn't have to take the final. And we'd get an A. We'd get an A if we did take the final, but if we didn't take the final, we'd get a B+ guaranteed.
Well, sign me up.
Sign me up.
Yeah, right.
Scotty.
Right.
Well, it was quite a remarkable thing. And to make a long story short, as I said, they only told me half the story, or maybe they were unwitting about this, but the apparatus and the gadgetry, electronic gadgetry that was used in the experiments, specifically a six contact headband that was wired to a very advanced computer for its time, this very special microchip, and then the data went from the headset to the computer to an output device, and it was a polygraph machine, and it had 6 pens that were mapping 6 different brain functions that the professor was measuring. As I said, electrical activity, the brain waves, alpha, beta, delta, theta, and also auditory input. I was given what he claimed was white noise, and then I had white goggles that whited out everything. So it was basically a sensory deprivation experiment to clear my brain of all sensory input and study its functions under this kind of rigorous scientific scrutiny. Well, what I think happened, whether by design or by accident, is that I believe that I got the Krell brain boost.
Right. That was I was just going to suggest that. Exactly.
Well, that's what I've really, honestly, after so many years, because actually I was a pretty bright lad in high school. You know, as you said, I did win a Regents scholarship to go to Fordham University. I'm very proud of that achievement. It was a very prestigious award and made possible for me to go to college. And what happened is that my brain was boosted. In fact, I can use faculties that are separated in individuals and integrate them. For example, I have a great facility in explaining very complex things that may be mathematical or algebraic, and I can really simplify it for the common man. But what I think happened is that the electrical activity of the headset, when he energized it, the electromagnetic impulses of the 6 electrodes created a circuit inside my brain and was laying down new pathways.
Do you think, did you speak Chinese before?
No, I did not speak Chinese before.
Exactly.
And when I went into Chinese, it was the easiest language I ever studied in my life. And I spoke Spanish and English growing up. I come from a Spanish heritage on my mother's side and Eastern European and Germanic on my father's side. And I'm just a New Yorker, I'm an American. And I had a facility with languages already because when you're bilingual, and I mean speaking Spanish and speaking English separately and not speaking Spanglish, right?
Right.
And that's what I mean.
Sure.
I was very strict in my household, that you didn't do that. Okay, so that gave me a basis in language. Then I got into high school and I learned French very easily. It's a Romance language. I learned Latin, and I can still translate Latin phrases. And the beauty of Latin is that when you know Latin, you can look at words in the English language that you've never seen before and understand them instantly from the Greek and the Latin roots.
Sure.
So when I got to Chinese, my God, I was so surprised. I was one of the top students in the class, and I acquired it within 3 years. I was speaking quite fluent Chinese. Within 2 years, I was speaking basic Chinese. I also got a job in a Chinese restaurant as a delivery boy in a wonderful restaurant here in New York on the west side, where they spoke Mandarin, because most of New York only spoke Cantonese. Chinatown in New York was Cantonese. So there was a restaurant with 2 really wonderful Mandarin-speaking people, and I worked there for a year and a half or 2. And I also taught English to Chinese refugees from Red China. In 1977, I was a volunteer lecturer at the China Institute in America.
Do you think the AI test had anything to do with your vision as well? And also, you just answered. Okay, I was going to say, before you answered that.
It's always been wonderful, but the rapidity. I have sharp eyes, but I have quick eyes. I can see things that other people can't see. And I'm talking about things as rapid as 1/30th of a second or even faster at times.
Well, we're going to get to that in a second. I have posted one of your moon racer pics, which I find absolutely fascinating. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But also, when I hear you in interviews, you have the capacity of recalling names and dates like in rapid fire succession.
Yes.
I can't do that. How do you? How is that? Is all of that because of the original AI stuff?
See, the memory part is a gift, but it was developed in growing up. My parents, my grandfather in particular, encouraged strong memory, and also Jimmy, growing up, if you're I don't want to ask you how old you are. I'll tell you how old I am. I'm 66 now.
I'm a little younger than you, but not by much.
Okay, you're a little younger. So I don't know if you were required to memorize poetry. Well, how about the multiplication table? Nobody knows the multiplication.
Yeah, nobody does anymore. Right.
I was in third grade struggling with the 9. No, the 9 was easy, but the 12 times table was hard for me. But anyway, you get through it. But memory, let me just put it to you. Memory is like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it atrophies. But I also did some studying in memory development. There is, you may still be able to find his books, Bruno Faust. Bruno Faust wrote books in the 1960s about memory. And there was a wonderful bookstore here in New York called Weiser's. I know when I say Weiser's bookstore, a lot of people will light up. It's a wonderful store of the most eclectic and occult and paranormal books and ancient knowledge books in the world, really. It was world famous. And some of the books were very expensive, but Mr. Weiser, Samuel Weiser, would let you go in there and just browse and hang around, pull a book off a shelf, And so I walked in, and I saw Bruno Faust's book on memory. So I pulled it out, and I skimmed through it, a few chapters, and got the gist of it, and put it back. I already had a strong memory. And look, let me tell you about my memory. I was forced to enter oratory contests. When I was in grammar school, I was in part of the parochial school system, and they had oratory contests there. And we were drafted, me and Michael, in my grammar school.
Mm-hmm.
We were drafted. You're the two smartest kids in the class. You're going whether you like it or not.
Right.
Saturday and Sunday. Well, you're going to represent the school. And what is this? It's an oratory contest in which we had to memorize a speech, a famous speech, and deliver it in this contest. So the first year, I memorized George Washington's farewell address. And I went to Power Memorial Academy where the contest was held, and I tried to recite this really stilted but wonderful, wonderful farewell speech that George Washington gave here in New York at Francis Tavern. And then the following year...
No mistakes?
The mistakes I made was I forgot some of the passages because the language was so stilted, so I stumbled in the first. And then in the second one, I got through it very well. I guess the stage fright was over, you know. The first time you're really freaking out.
Right.
Kid, let me see, how old was I? That would have been, and it was for 2 years, right? So the first year I did George Washington. The second year, John F. Kennedy had been elected, and I heard his inaugural speech. And I memorized his inaugural speech, and I delivered it. And you know what? That speech is still resonating through my brain. And I believe, honestly, that when you think and when you recite another person's thoughts, your brain gets in tune with that person.
Sure, it does. Sure.
Tuning forks. And that tuning fork connection between me and John F. Kennedy has never been severed. I don't believe it can be severed. I can recite to you passages from some of the wonderful things he said.
Of course, the rice speech in Texas.
Yeah, or even simple things. I recited one from my friend this morning, and it says, with a good conscience, our only true reward, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking His blessings and His help, and knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. That's natural. You know, that's a belief that I have, and you know, it reflects what President Kennedy really believed about his own work. When he said God's work must truly be our own, he lived up to those words, and he saved the world from nuclear holocaust. And that's why I'm devoted to his memory. He's the best friend I ever had.
Is that Facebook going crazy in the background?
Maybe, you know, the bings and the bongs.
Yeah, because I keep looking at my computers here every time I hear it go off, like, do I have something turned on? But I think it's you. Hopefully it's not me.
Oh, my God, I'm getting... People are listening, and people are inviting me to be on other radio shows.
Of course they are. Everybody listens to this show. It's great.
Right. It's really great.
Yeah, it is great. You got to love it.
I'm going to turn off Facebook so we don't get those bings. Okay?
That's all right. And I was listening, this was probably 6 months ago, I was listening to an interview with you, and you could tell you were right there in the heart of New York City. I could hear sirens in the background. I could hear New York City coming to life, and I just miss it. I just missed it so much.
Yeah, I like the noise, you know. I go away from New York City, and after, you know, let's say I go to Europe and it takes a month. It's been a long time, by the way. I haven't traveled since before 9/11. But I used to go to England and Germany in the 1990s into the early 2000s. And it's quite an experience.
You know what the experience is? It's when you come back to New York. Then you realize how cool that's it. You know, you can kind of get away and for a little bit, but you go back and you're like, man, this is the place.
What what I was going to say is after 3 weeks in Europe, he's like, oh, God, next week I'll be back. I miss New York. I miss the noise. I miss the people more than anything else. I love living here, and although everyone hears terrible things in the media about New York, terrible tragedy with Mr. Eric Gardner, I'll tell you, there are 10 million people here in New York, and we live here because we love each other.
That's right.
And I found that out after 9/11. There was a very remarkable thing that I like to relate to people about 9/11. After 9/11, we were all in shock, and there was something that happened to all of us, and it was, for me, it was discernible in the eye contact that you had with strangers. For about a month or 2 months afterwards, people can't control their pupils. It's a reaction to ambient light regimen.
That's right.
But I would walk down the street and I saw the same reaction in people. They'd do a double focus on you.
Mm-hmm.
They'd look at you, and this feeling would come from the person and go out from me and say, hey man, or hey ma'am, I don't know who you are, but I'm so glad you're alive. And I'm glad I'm alive because that was a terrible thing that happened. And you're just a New Yorker, you're a stranger, you're a human being, but I really care about you, and I'm happy that you're alive. And that went for every person, regardless of, race, color, and creed. And I'm very proud that New York never turned bitter, never had an incident of backlash or, as so common in other places, anger. And so, folks, New York got better. I tell you honestly, New York has never been better, and we have grown. I want to make a movie. Let me tell you a little bit about my movie. Just a little idea.
Sure.
I want to make a movie about New Yorkers and before and after 9/11, and the cinematography is going to reveal the heroism of New Yorkers. In the beginning of the film, all the buildings overshadow the people. The people are like ants, tiny little people, and especially the World Trade Center. It's gigantic. And people talk, and the buildings are making them look small. And then 9/11 happens, and they're crumbled. And then the camera angle is going to change very slowly, where the camera is going to come down, and the people are going to be bigger than the buildings.
And that's exactly what happened. Yes.
Secret of New York, folks.
That's right. That's right.
People are bigger than the buildings here. And I do hope you come to New York and see for yourself. Don't believe the bunk you hear on TV. New York is a wonderful city.
Oh, New York is the greatest. It absolutely is. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host Jimmy Church. We're talking with Robert D. Morningstar. Now, if you don't mind, Robert, let's change gears a little bit. I do want to talk about your vision, and the reason why I brought it up earlier is because the pictures, the screenshots that you've done and were able to grab of the moon racer, I think are some of the most astounding pics like ever in the history of man. I mean, pretty extraordinary. And I think you'll agree with me on that. Well, I might be an overstatement, but not really, because if they are what they are, if they are what I think they are and what you think they are, then it's a huge, huge cover-up. And so what I would like for you to do, I'll have our producers here retweet and repost the pics really quick while you're talking about them. But how did it happen? How on God's green earth did you happen to grab? Because you said 1/30th of a second, which is the frame rate. You have the ability to do that. Nobody else does. You don't see that. It's an invisible, it's a subliminal thing. You did. How did it happen?
In this particular instance, I was invited to be a lecturer, speaker at the Secret Space Program and Breakaway Civilization Conference in San Mateo last June, June 27th and 28th. And I said, I'll do something on the moon. I'll do something on ufology and the moon. Who's minding the moon was my initial idea. So I went very deeply into research into the Apollo photographs and Apollo films, and all of a sudden, I got on this psychic train, a psychic track, and I started hitting or Google. I have to say, Google works through God works through Google is one of my sayings, because this algorithm that that tracks your likes and your interests and your communications and the things you bought, the books you read, all of that. It all sums up, and the people are afraid of it, kind of like it's Big Brother snooping on you.
Right.
You know what? There are two Big Brothers. There's Bad Big Brother and there's Good Big Brother. And Good Big Brother has been watching over my shoulder and dropping wonderful icons and pieces of information, distractions on the sidebar. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And in the process, many rare films and rare documentaries have fallen in my lap. And this was one of them, which is the Apollo 16 film onboard camera. And there's another one which I haven't shown yet, which is the Apollo 17 LEM deployment. And Jimmy, every Apollo mission that went to the moon was tailed and harassed by UFOs. And I say harassed because the stuff that was going on around them must have scared the hell out of them. And that's the reason we didn't go back. We were supposed to have Apollo 18, 19, and 20. And we may have had them secretly, but they said chop right there at Apollo 17. But in the process, I've been scouring NASA websites for more than 2 decades. And every once in a while you stumble on a treasure trove. And I did so. And it was in Apollo 17 photographs, Apollo 10, Apollo 16. And the upshot is this. I have found a large sequence of photos and films that show UFOs operating around, over, and on the moon. And some of these went blazing by the Apollo spacecraft and were captured by the camera. So the moon racer was one of the most exciting discoveries I had. I saw something racing across the moon, and it was kind of like a silhouette, translucent. It's almost as if you saw an icicle moving over ice. So you could see the shape of the icicle, and it was distorting the background. But when it left the background of the moon and went into space, it showed its form, and that's what you're showing people there, a frame that I shot off a 42-inch monitor in which I froze the frame, capturing, I think 2 or 3 photos that I put out. One shows the craft with one wing still below the lunar horizon and the center section and the outrigger, let's call it a wing, but it's not a wing like we understand.
No, outrigger is a good way to describe
outrigger
it.
Outrigger is a good description of that craft. And notice it's asymmetrical.
It is completely.
One side looks like a scimitar or a curved sword, and the other side looks like a tower, a structure, plumbing. So this gives me the idea that this is an electromagnetic craft because it's not a reaction engine. There's no smoke coming out of it. There's no rocket burning.
Right.
And this thing in the little snip of film is catching up and zipping by the Apollo space capsule. And then the interesting thing is the discovery of those 3 frames. And this is the greatest part of the story.
Okay, before we get to that, let me ask you the direction that the craft is following. Is it going down? Is it moving towards...
Up. It's rising up, and it's traveling from right to left.
It's traveling from right to left, not from left to right. Okay.
No, it's going from the right to the left, and you're seeing it now entering the blackness of space. And now here's the interesting thing about these 3 frames I isolated. There's this frame with one wing still under the limb of the moon and most of the craft in space, so it starts to appear in, let's say, it's almost a stealth craft. It's camouflaged as it's going across the moon. I've described it as looking like Wonder Woman's airplane, for those who remember her glass airplane. So it comes out. I got that one. And then it goes out completely, and I have the whole... Do you have the one with the whole craft out in space?
Our producers are... Yes.
Touching the moon. Not touching the moon, okay.
It just posted.
Okay. There's a 3rd frame in which it's risen a little higher, and suddenly 3 bright lights appear like space stations illuminating it in outer space. And here comes the clincher. There's another frame, but it's not a whole frame. It's a partial frame that's been cut intentionally along, let's say, the 20% to 25% of the next frame. I mean, a really ragged cut. I mean, there's a way. I was making 8mm film when I was 11 years old, you know, and I owned a camera like Zapruder, so I can tell you a lot about that later. But I learned how to splice, and you splice between frames, or you do a clean splice in the mid frame, but you always see the jump. And there's a way of doing with a razor blade. It's just nice, clean slice. But there's another way of doing it. It's almost like an X-Acto blade carving across really jaggedly. And I looked at this frame and I said, that's actually what attracted me. There was a jump, and I picked it up. You know, I think it was 24 frames per second. So in 1/24th of a second, I saw something, and I stopped it, and I went, hard to do this on just your Windows Media Player, but I froze the frames, and then I got to that one, and I realized, you know what? This is a time capsule. Some NASA technician way back in the 1970s was told to get rid of this thing, cut that thing out of there, and don't let the public see it. So what he did is he goes, yeah, okay, I'll cut it out, but I'll cut it out my way. What he did is he cut out everything that was beyond in outer space where the craft was really, really clear.
Right.
But he left a jagged mark, almost like a signature. And I look at that and I say, thank you, Mr. NASA technician. Somebody told you to commit a crime years ago. Because, that's what it is.
It's evidence, yes.
This is official government document of a trip to the moon. And somebody tells the guy, look, we can't let the public see this UFO craft, so cut it out. So the guy's torn, he's like, oh, my God, I got to do it, keep my job. Oh, I can't. Okay, but I can't really do it. What am I going to do? Okay, I'll cut out almost all of it. I'll leave 3 frames. And almost like, as I say, a time capsule, waiting for eyes to see, just blink and say, wow, what was that? And that's exactly what happened to me. I said, wow, what was that? And when I froze it, that happened, and I see that craft. Now, some people are trying to say, oh, that's a reflection off the glass, off the inside of the space capsule. BS. I have found 3 other photographs of similar craft from 3 other missions. So, and they're not reflections off the glass.
Right.
Only that. On the other side of the moon, and which is the most interesting thing for me, is that towers that were found by the Russians. I'm sure you're familiar with the Russian Luna and Zond probes.
Yep.
They were the first real photographs of the far side of the moon. That's why the craters on the far side of the moon, many of them have Russian names. Most of them have Russian names because they were the first ones to take a photo of the dark side, as it was called then. Now, it's quite improper to say dark side unless you're talking about
Pink Floyd.
So there are towers on the far side of the moon. I am about to release a tape taken by the Chang'e-2, the Chinese satellite.
Right.
The second probe took some marvelous video of an area on the far side of the moon that I have come to call Hiroshima on the moon. It's an area of vast devastation, but obvious infrastructures left. Standing walls, walls with windows, doorways, towers with triangular tops, columnar structures where the columns are all of the same height and the same diameter. A structure that looks like the ramparts of a castle with a cross on it, and I call it the White Cross of Hiroshima on the moon. And I'm using that term intentionally to communicate to people that these things do happen, and these cataclysms can be of a nature, such as destructive nature, either atomic nuclear holocaust or cosmic cataclysm, asteroid impact. But it's clear to me that the Chinese found a very interesting region of the moon.
It could also just be really, really old and worn down.
That's possible too, but there are ruptures, there are cracks, there are breaks and collapsed walls, collapsed domes, and things like that. And yet there's another area that looks like it's modern. You know, it's like ruins here, but a modern complex of tall circular or columnar towers, as I said. So this video will be part of the Secret Space Program DVD.
How do you think?
So will that. Excuse me. I got to shut this guy. I've been watching the hearings down in Washington of the Gruber. Mr. Gruber.
Oh yeah, the Goober, the Goober hearings.
Yeah, the Goober hearings. Yeah, you're on the same track.
Yes, we are, sir. Yes, we are. How is it possible? This is the one thing where I scratch my head. Yeah. When I talk to Richard and Mike Barra, friends, and I appreciate all of their views. I'm a firm believer of all evidence should be put on the table, and let's discuss it. But when we're talking about a 5-mile high tower, that's where I step back and go, okay, hold on. My BS meter starts to peg. And so what's your take on that? I mean, how is it possible? Why aren't we building, 5-mile high stuff here on Earth? What's the difference?
Oh, I'll tell you honestly, when I met Richard Hoagland in 1993, I had heard about the towers on the moon, and I was like, glass towers 2 miles high. And I said, oh, my God, that's crazy. Get out of here.
Exactly.
Well, let me tell you, and when you really sit down and think about it, it's not that far-fetched, and I'm telling you, the towers are far higher than 5 miles. Have you seen my photo of Big Ben on the moon?
One of the coolest pictures I've ever seen, and I still can't explain it. So
yeah. Well, wait till you see the original from which that one was extracted, because that's only a very small piece of a huge photo that shows about 1,800 miles of the moon's horizon, and that thing sticks up like a thumb. That photo was taken while the craft was 367 miles away from that object. And that's not the only one that I have found. So there's a lot. Okay, here, let me get back on this track, because this is very important. I thought it was crazy, just like everybody else thinks it's crazy to talk about mile-high, multi-mile high towers on the moon. Now, listen to this. The moon has 1/6 our gravity. Okay? So right off the bat, we should be able, with our materials, we would be able to build 6 times higher.
6 times higher, like the World Trade Center. 6 times higher, 6 times taller the building.
Just simply because the gravity is 1/6, we wouldn't be fighting the same amount of resistance. Secondly, there's no weather on the moon, or at least they tell you that. There is quite a bit of unusual emanations and fogs and smoke coming out of the far side of the moon. It seems as if in really cold, almost black of night time on the moon, there's condensation that occurs, and there are huge eruptions of plumes of black smoke that are smoldering. It looks like it's smoldering on certain regions of the moon. However, there's no, like 50 mile, 30 mile, 40 mile an hour wind. The atmosphere, they say, on the moon is very, very low and very thin. So there's another thing. There's no weather. So the buildings would not have to stand the stresses, for example, that the World Trade Centers used to have to stand, and the Empire State Building. The World Trade Center used to actually move several inches. It was flexible. You don't have that on the moon. And then one of the most common building materials to be found on the moon is glass, because the regolith and all of it, if you look at, and I have had the moon rocks, 6 types of moon rocks in my hand, and I've been able to study them under a high-powered microscope, and I've seen the breccia, the northrosite, anorthosite, the different stuff they found in different regions. It looked like diamond dust. And it was iridescent. Almost every particle of the northrosite and anorthosite seemed to give off a rainbow glow. And Steve Troy, one of Richard Hoagland's friends and contributors, wrote a wonderful article many years ago called "The True Colors of the Moon," and he was showing that NASA has bleached out. The moon has several colors. Why do you think the ground looks brown in those modern color photos that China is sending back? It looks red-brown. And if you look at the terrain, you'll see red-brown with green patches. It was my hope that China would be more forthright and forthcoming with their lunar research, and kind of show up NASA, say, see. But you know what? Richard Hoagland published a really wonderful article about the Chang'e lander, and he had photographs of the area, and he found one with a pyramid. If you go to his website, you'll see it, and it's got a pyramidal rock in the center, and that pyramidal rock has a dot or a circle, almost an eye in the pyramid type of formation. So Richard concentrated on the pyramid, and I'm looking at the photo, and I'm saying, there's something wrong with this photo. What is it about this photo? And then it bugged me, and then all of a sudden I look at, what? The horizon doesn't look right. The horizon, the curve of the moon doesn't look right, and the horizon looks too close. So I enhanced the photograph, and I'm standing, as I said, in front of a 42-inch monitor, and I'm looking at it like, what's wrong with this picture? And then I moved my body slightly, just wavered a little to the right, and when I moved to the right, these red forms appeared in the black. And then I moved to the left, and they disappeared. And then I moved to the right, and then I crouched down and looked up at a slant angle at it, and it looked like a ghost town. Like it looked like an adobe ghost town within the black of the background of the moon. And I realized that I was right. The horizon was too close. The curvature of the moon was too great in this photograph. Remember, I've been studying Apollo photographs, how long ago? 45 years, right? Whatever came out.
Right.
In Apollo, let's call it moonscape, there is a definite uniform curvature to the moon, and this was too curved and it was too close. And I found that the Chinese were covering up even more marvelous things in the background.
Why would everybody... I have issue. Well, first off, I don't even know if we went to the moon to begin with, but that's my own personal, quandary that I'm fighting with every single day. But why would everybody, like the Chinese and the Russians and us, cover up knowledge of something being on the moon? Whether it was us, visiting the moon, somebody else visiting the moon. When I say us, I mean thousands of years ago. But But why cover it up? Why change? And Mars falls into the same situation. Why change colors and so forth and try to hide what is actually there? What do you gain from that? I just don't get it.
You gain the preservation of the status quo.
Of who? Science?
Yes, science. And science, the reason is that in 1967, NASA commissioned a white paper from the Brookings Institution to determine what policy should be applied if we should find evidence of life on the moon, previous civilizations, extraterrestrials, or even previous human visitations to the moon. And the Brookings Institution said that the people shouldn't be told because it would be too disruptive to civilization, including religion, politics, and economics. And they said that the revelation of an intelligence or another life form on the moon or previous habitation on the moon would be a threat to our civilization, and that religion in particular, now this is where I think the whole thing was bunk, you see. Of all the religions on Earth that they chose to be disruptive, quote unquote, by revelations of extraterrestrial life on the moon, they chose the Buddhists.
That's right.
Which is ridiculous.
It is. Well, it's not ridiculous, but it was surprising.
Because Buddhists would be the most ready to accept India. They have so many deities, wrathful deities, beneficent deities, jinns, demons, devas, all kinds of creatures, spiritual and otherwise, are part of the Buddhist iconography. And so I don't think they're the ones, but I'll say this. There would be religions that would be disrupted by it. And I tell people that you may not believe in religion, but religion is a glue of society. It keeps a society together. And it makes it's like a cornerstone of civilization. So that's one thing that would be very disrupted. But science, more than anything else, would be disrupted. Evolutionary theory would be right out the door.
But NASA paid for the Brookings paper, and so that automatically just says it's going to be slanted.
Yes. The other part is that was 1967, so the decision not to tell the American people anything was made a year before Apollo 8 circumnavigated the moon.
Didn't they have evidence prior to 1967 of something being there?
Oh, sure. That's why we went.
Exactly.
If you look at some of the lunar orbiter photos are intriguing. Richard Hoagland had used some of those for the tower, the supposedly suspended 9 miles high above the moon. It's a photo that shows some of the moon in darkness. It shows the terminator. It shows the left side is illuminated, but in the darkness, some spire is rising so high that it's catching sunlight and illuminating. It's got cabling around it. It kind of looks like the Empire State Building to me. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if we didn't get the idea for building this Empire State Building from astronomical observations of structures on the moon. One of the most interesting is Mount Piton, Piton. It's a spike that rises right out of the flatness of the Mare Imbrium, and it shoots like a nail straight up into the air, into the sky. There's no air. Into the sky, 15,000 feet, from flatland to like a nail sticking straight up. And I saw a photograph of it in an old encyclopedia from the 1930s, and I looked at it, and it caught my eye, and that's really when my real interest in lunar anomalies began, which is about 1987. It was a book I picked up at one of those tables in New York City where people sell books.
Right.
And it was part of an encyclopedia. There was only A, and there was no other, just the letter A. And I opened, and the first picture that it opened to was this area of the Mare Imbrium with the perfectly circular crater called Plato, and this thing that's like pointing right at the camera. It looked like I was looking at the Empire State Building from above. So that began my curiosity about what that thing was, and I found out it was Mount Piton.
Why did we stop? Why did the brakes get pumped? Yeah, why did we stop in 1972?
I think we were scared off. We were told, just like, hey, don't Yankee, go home. Basically, that's what I really believe happened. It was just so distressing to society, to NASA, to science. Listen, the Brookings Institution says that if such a thing were revealed, and if there were a civilization that we discovered who was technologically 200 or 300 years ahead of Earth science, that the people most affected, who would have the greatest to lose, would be doctors, scientists, engineers. And that they'd be so despondent with the idea of going to work in the morning and trying to catch up with a civilization that was 200, 300 years ahead of us, that they might not even get out of bed.
I have a friend that's an engineer over at NASA, and I asked him last year, right when we landed the rover on Mars, right when that happened, so I don't know, a year and a half ago, and I asked him then, I can't say his name. I don't want to embarrass him. But I asked him, I said, look, why are you guys holding back information about ET and what could possibly be on Mars. He said, Jimmy, I'm not kidding about this. We want that publicity. If we could prove it, we would have the funding that it would never stop. So trust me, we're not holding anything back. And his answer to me said, you're holding back right now. You're not even telling me the truth.
Yeah.
I could feel the vibe on that. And do you buy into that?
No, I believe that there are two aspects to NASA. There's white NASA and there's black NASA. And black projects is what I mean by black NASA. And that's the military part of it. See, the trips to the moon were all dressed up as, scientific jaunts for the advancement of mankind, but they really were military spy missions going up there to find out what was really going on. And we found out. And in no uncertain terms, we were not welcome. And so there's no point in going back. What's the point of going back when you're going to have to hide more of what you've already found? You understand?
Yes, I
That's
do.
What I think. And it's too threatening. The only person that's really been forthright of the astronauts has been Edgar Mitchell.
Right.
And I'm happy to say I'm in touch with Edgar Mitchell, and I've shared things with him, things that he shared with us, but he didn't see. He took photographs of objects over the surface of the moon, and I found Apollo 14 photographs that he had taken. And while taking panoramic pictures of the moon, he took two pictures of the same rock. And I noticed, why would he take two pictures of the same rock? Thumbnails, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They lay a whole strip of 25 thumbnails on a page. And this is my eyesight, that I'm able to see like a speck in one little thumbnail that's not in the other thumbnail. And then when I open it up, it turned out to be a UFO. A very unusual UFO that I have found in other photographs as well. Some taken as far back as 1959 by an Earth-based astronomer named Jesse Wilson. So there are space stations around the moon, and they're orbiting, and they have their guardians. Just like we used to scramble F-16s and F-14s along the coast in case of intruders, or earlier in the 60s when we had the problems with the Russians, which we're having again now, we'd scramble F-4s, Phantoms out there, Phantom 2s, to intercept Bear bombers. So the moon has their guardians too. And whenever we landed, we were observed. And I can tell you this without a doubt, because, Jimmy, in a very short time, I'm going to be sharing some videos with you. And one of the most exciting videos that I found, it's very funny, because the reaction that I had here, sitting in my living room, discovering this video, or this film, actually, was the same reaction I saw 10 seconds later in The Astronaut. And if you'll let me explain, it's taking place during the deployment of the Apollo 17 lunar module for its descent to the moon. Mm-hmm. Lunar module is it's still attached, right? So it's filling up the whole window. And the astronaut who stayed aboard, Ronald Evans, is right up. Wait a minute, is this Apollo 17? Well, the astronaut is standing right up to the window, and his spacesuit is reflected in the window. Now, the LEM is deployed and starts to back up, and it's backing up and backing up. And during this period of its backing up, sky is starting to appear, the upper right and the upper right side. And the camera, which is mounted lower than the astronaut's height, is shooting out the window. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting here in my living room and watching this deployment, and all of a sudden, when about 1/3 of the screen is sky and the other part is LEM, this triangular UFO appears at about the 12 o'clock position. It rotates slowly, going down, descending diagonally to disappear at the right-hand side of the frame. Now, this thing it's triangular, perfectly triangular, white lights on each corner.
Really?
And a white light in the center. And the thing is tumbling perfectly centered And as it's tumbling, it's turning slightly, it's turning aspect. And I said, my God, it looks like it's monitoring the deployment, almost as if we had a spacecraft that was videotaping the deployment of the LEM.
Right.
Now here's my reaction. I'm sitting here in the same chair I'm in now, and I go, whoa, what is that? I jump up, and I run closer to the screen, and about 7 seconds later, when the object is visible to the astronauts, I saw a discernible tremor in his reflection. His spacesuit in the reflection jumps, and then his helmet crashes. He almost hits the glass, trying to see the UFO going around the corner, because he couldn't see it until it was almost halfway down the window.
He had the same reaction that you did.
He had the same reaction I did. I jumped up out of my seat and jumped at the screen. You see? I'm sitting here 4 feet away, I'd say 5 feet away. I jumped up and I was like, wow, put with my face right in the screen trying to see this tumbling triangular UFO. And then I see the astronaut do the same thing.
When are we going to see this video analysis?
Very shortly. I'm finishing up the video right now for hopefully Christmas release. And I'm going to release little modules of it. So you're on the list.
This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. A little late on the station ID here. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do. Hashtag DMRadioNet. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. We are talking with Robert D. Morningstar. Open-ended conversation tonight. And I do want to change gears a little bit. I do want to talk about JFK. And we just came off of the anniversary, of course. And the first thing, why do you think? Let's go straight there. Why was he assassinated?
The list is long. The list is incredibly long. But the main reason he was assassinated was that he took a stand against the Central Intelligence Agency dictating policy to the President of the United States. Okay?
Okay.
That's it. He started with that. Then
that opens up every door imaginable.
Absolutely. Everything. The military-industrial complex, the war in Vietnam, the Bay of Pigs. Fletcher Prouty is one of the great military minds that America ever produced, and one of the most loyal officers that the U.S. Army ever had. And what I would like you to do is look at his YouTube video, which talks about the Bay of Pigs and Vietnam. And he gave me an insight that, I was shocked to realize how right he was. He said, the Bay of Pigs and Vietnam were really the part of the same thing. The Vietnam War was not a war. It was a black operation in the same way that the Bay of Pigs landing was a black operation. And he said the reason we didn't win in Vietnam is that the military didn't run the war in Vietnam. The CIA ran the war. And every man in the field was answerable not to an officer at the highest level of his local district, but to a CIA officer who was dictating the strategy and the policy. And he said, because the military's hands were tied by this CIA black operation, we came out, it was neutral in Vietnam. We didn't win, we didn't lose. But the people who won were the military-industrial complex. Lyndon Johnson made a lot of money in Vietnam. If you read a book called Kill Zone by Craig Roberts, you'll find out how Lyndon Johnson made a trip to Vietnam in 1963. Kennedy sent him off. He said, look, you're an embarrassment to the administration. Why don't you do an inspection tour of Vietnam? And then he went. And while he was in Vietnam, he saw tremendous business opportunities. And it turns out, according to Craig Roberts in Kill Zone, that Mrs. Johnson, under Mrs. Johnson's name, he bought vast tracts of land in Vietnam and then rented that land to the United States to build the Air Force bases and the Army bases. And he awarded tremendous contracts to Brown and Root to dredge Kamran Bay to make it deep enough for our ships to dock there. It's on and on and on.
Well, and you had the issues with NASA and everything going.
Listen to NASA. Listen to this. I have a knack for finding treasure troves, and one of the treasure troves of Kennedy-era material is to be found in the United States Air Force Museum, which I believe is in Huntsville, Alabama. And it's online, too. So I went to the U.S. Air Force Museum and started going through their catalogs, and this is about 10 years ago. And I found a recording of a meeting that President Kennedy had with the head of NASA, James R. Webb, and the executive committee, National Security Council and his staff. And Kennedy is telling James R. Webb, the director of NASA, that we've got to change our priorities in the space program. We have to go to the moon, and we have to get there before the Russians do. And Webb is adamant, no, we can't do that. We don't have the capacity, and we have a plan, and the first plan is to take, get up in local space and create a military defense perimeter in outer space, in local space, and maybe in 20 years we can go to the moon. And Kennedy says, no, you don't understand. We have to do it now because we know that the Russians are trying to get to the moon. If the Russians get to the moon before we do, it'll show that communism is a better system. So we've got to make this a priority. And Webb goes on, and he's very, I would say, disrespectful. He speaks down to the president like he's talking to a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't like to take orders. And he frustrates President Kennedy to the point where you can feel President Kennedy's exasperation. I would say he looks around the room because he says, hey, doesn't he get it? Basically, doesn't this guy get it? He's like talking to the air, right? The microphone's picking it up. And he's saying, no, we're going to the moon because we have to get to the moon before the Russians do. Understand that? And that's what's going to happen. And it's a very bitter ending in this conference. And Kennedy walks out. You hear his footsteps and you hear his entourage, and then the murmurs start. The microphones are left on, and there's a lot of grumbling in the background. It's like, what are we going to do about this? I don't know. We got to talk about it. So that's fascinating, and that happened November 12th, 1962. And people in my circle who are privy to the NSA documents that have come up regarding President Kennedy's last phone call on the hotline with Premier Khrushchev discusses trying to avoid nuclear confrontations. They had a close call the year before. They were trying to get away from that. Cooperation in joint ventures in outer space.
Well, and that's what Kennedy wanted. He was hoping for that friendship, and he was the one that established the hotline between. Yeah. He
had, according to Grant Cameron, who has Presidential UFOs website, President Kennedy continued after the hotline was set up. President Kennedy had exchanges about 35 times with Premier Khrushchev, and so he was circumventing this protocol of involving the State Department, the Central Intelligence Agency, the Defense Department in all the negotiations or contacts with the Russians, and he was doing it all by himself. And so they started to look at him as a renegade and as a traitor. But I have a wonderful story to tell you about Nikita Khrushchev and President Kennedy, and Nikita Khrushchev trying to save President Kennedy's life. My God, this is an amazing story.
Yeah, go ahead.
It came to me this year. There's a really good journalist. He calls himself Dark Journalist. He has a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I've watched them all. He's pretty good.
Now, with a Richard Russell interview discussing the man who knew too much, Richard Case Nagel.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that fellow?
Yep.
Okay, Richard Case, for the audience who doesn't know, Richard Case Nagel saved his own life from being one of the possible patsies in the JFK assassination, because Oswald wasn't the only patsy they were setting up. So Richard Case Nagel was a CIA agent who was a double agent, and with the knowledge of the CIA was doing double agency work with the KGB. So he told the KGB he was working for them. He told the CIA, I'm working for you, but they want me to work for them, so let's do it. So they did it. So he had contacts with both. So Richard Case Nagel says that in September-October of 1963, the KGB told him, listen, there's a plot to kill President Kennedy. We found out about it. And the plot is planning to use this fellow Oswald as the scapegoat. They want to pin the murder of President Kennedy on the Soviet Union and Cuba, and we can't let that happen. Now here's the deal. The KGB had Richard Case Nagel tailing Oswald like a babysitter. The KGB told him there was also an Oswald double that they were tailing. And then one day, KGB said to Richard Case Nagel, we want you to kill Oswald. He said, what? He says, look, they're planning to use this man Oswald because he defected and he went to the Soviet Union, and they've painted him as a communist. They're planning to use him to blame the murder of your president on the Soviet Union or on Cuba, or both. We cannot allow that. We want you to kill Oswald. And Richard Case Nagel was in a quandary because he didn't want to kill Oswald. Oswald was working for the CIA just as much as he was, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't kill Oswald, but he finds out that the Russians killed the Oswald double. Now, what that says to me, if you know how the Soviet system works, it's a stovepipe architecture, very rigid, and everything goes up the chute and down the chute. So when the KGB knew that there was going to be an assassination attempt on President Kennedy that was going to be blamed on them, common sense says they had a vested interest in saving themselves from being labeled the murderers. So they were actually trying to save President Kennedy's life by killing the patsy. They weren't going after the mechanics, you know, they didn't have the wherewithal for that. But they thought, okay, even if they kill President Kennedy, at least they won't be able to use this guy to blame it on us. You understand?
Yep.
So that's what I say, you know, Khrushchev had to have known about this, and nothing in operations went down in the KGB if it wasn't approved from the top. So I honestly believe that one of the great stories yet to be told, it's been told, but nobody's really heard it or realized it, and it's the story that Richard Russell tells in the story of Richard Case Nagel. Now, let me tell you how Richard Case Nagel saved his life. This guy's really smart. He felt that, oh my God, you know, they could, because he had Russian contacts too, right? He's in bed with the KGB.
Yep.
So he realized they could be setting me up. If not Oswald, they could set me up as the patsy for President Kennedy's assassination. So he decided that the only way to really save his own life and not be accused of killing President Kennedy or being framed was, guess what? To be in jail on the day it happened.
Smart
Guy. So what did he do? He walked, I believe, I think it was Fort Worth. He walked into a Fort Worth bank, handed a note to the teller, said, give me $100. Took out his gun, he fired 4 shots into the ceiling, and he waited for them to call the cops.
Brilliant.
And they arrested him, and they interrogated him, and then the cops said to him, you really weren't trying to rob this bank, were you? He said, take me away.
Yeah, take me away. Put the cuffs on. I'll tell you later.
He was in jail on the day that President Kennedy was assassinated, and he did serve 4 years for what he did in the bank, but he saved his own life, and thank God he told his story to Richard Russell, the man who knew too much.
This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. We're talking with Robert D. Morningstar. I am your host, Jimmy Church, Bespoke Radio for the Masses. You do want to follow us on Twitter, at JChurchRadio, hashtag DMRadioNet. Come hang out in the sandbox. This just flew by 2 or 3 times here on Twitter, and this is it. You have to ask Robert about the dream he had while trapped in a movie theater.
Oh.
And that comes from Jonas. And then the follow-up tweets were, Robert, you got to. It ties everything. You got to. So I just did it. So I'm turning the stage over to you, Robert. I need to hear this.
Okay. I've told people that my life has been guided. I have a spirit that speaks to me from the gut. While I'm awake, I have a voice that comes up from the center of my body and speaks to my head, and I distinguish that one from the voice that's speaking to you now, which is from my brain, although I speak from the heart in my emotions. There's this other voice which is called intuition or instinct, and it inspires me. And other times, and I am a Jungian, as far as my psychology is concerned, my school of psychology, it's called Gestalt psychology, Jungian psychology. And in the Jungian scheme of things, your soul, your higher mind, whatever you want to call it, your Christ consciousness, higher consciousness, speaks to you in your dreams. But most people are not, they don't remember their dreams. They're not trained. They just think they're just, mental ramblings, but they're not. There are very different kinds of dreams. And the dream that the person, thank you for offering that question, they must have heard me on another show. I only told this, I believe, once. I think it was to your friend John Wells. And it deals with this. In 1990, I made a trip to Switzerland to visit a friend of mine, girlfriend. And while there, I decided to fly in the Swiss Alps. I wanted to fly the Matterhorn. And that was because I had seen a movie in the 1950s called The Crawling Eye. And the only people who were safe from the crawling eye were people in the airplanes. So I wanted to have a vicarious thrill of flying the Cessna around the Matterhorn like I'd seen in that movie.
Sure.
The night before, I was very excited about it. The night before, I had this dream. An extremely vivid dream that I walked into the side of a mountain in the Swiss Alps, and it was a cave. It was an ice cave. And as I entered the ice cave, I saw a desk, and there was a wizened old man at the desk, and he called me, and he said, "Come here." And as I went, he introduced himself that he was the angel of history. He'd been waiting for me. "Come, let me show you what your people have done with their history." And I followed him through the ice cave, and this old angel was going through the ice cave, and where he walked, there was illumination. As we were walking through the ice cave, I looked to the left, and I saw bodies on the left and right buried in the ice,
Okay.
They had been iced, right?
Right.
Now, one of them definitely was Marilyn Monroe, because even in ice, I could tell it was she. Then to the right, I looked, and I saw a movie star. I couldn't make him out. He looked like he had reddish blonde hair, tall, rugged, handsome. I thought Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, and, I move on. And as we move on, we came to this part of the cave where I wanted to go to the right because I felt the floor. And I've been in caves, and caves have natural formation. So my instinct was go to the right. But the right side was blocked. There was a giant boulder there and no passage. And it was forced to go to the left. And the angel says to me, "Come, let me show you. Follow me." So as we go to the left, the cave started to get smaller and smaller. We had to crouch. He said, "Follow me." And I'm crouching, and now I'm really way down. And it's almost as if there was one little candle light illuminating this cul-de-sac, the end. And he says to me, "Look, do you see what your people have done with their history? They've gone to a dead end. You are going toward the end of humanity. You must go back. You must go back and tell your people they have to get back on the right track of history." And I realized, wow, he's telling me humanity is going to come to an end if we keep going in the same direction. All right, let's go back. So we're going back, and we come to that juncture where I wanted to go right, and I saw the boulder. But I saw the boulder, and I didn't touch it. I just followed him and went to the left. So I went back, and then I looked, and I went up to it. I touched it, and it was paper mache and plaster. And it was huge, and I looked up, and the top of it had started to break apart, and you could see a wooden frame and the ragged papier-mâché breaking up, and I said, it's falling apart, but this is so huge a project. I can't do this by myself. I need help. I've got to go back. And the angel said, yes, go back. Tell your people. And he said, go back, get help. Come demolish this papier-mâché boulder to the right path of history. So I go back, and when I go back and I leave the cave, I find myself seated in a theater. And the theater is full, and when I look to the left and to the right, I could see humanity, the multitudes. I looked to one side, and it was all of the people in North America, and I looked in another area, and it was all of the millions of South America, and then I looked, it was Asia and Africans and Europeans, and there was this movie was running, and fortunately I couldn't see the movie. I knew I was in the theater, and I was forced to sit there with my head facing the screen, but somehow I was shielded from the content, and I was only observing that everybody was being forced, under penalty of death, to keep their eyes on this movie that was being run 24/7, 365 days a year, every year. And anybody who took their eyes off the movie was shot, because there were armed guards in the front looking at the audience. And anybody who took their eyes off the screen, they just blew them away. And I saw 2 people killed because they looked off the screen. Now, I had my head straight, and my eyes were looking to the side, sidelong glances, you know? And I said, this is insane. This is the movie that's fooled the world. That's what it was called. The film that fooled the world. But I couldn't see what that film was. And then I said to my friend, Barbara, we got to get out of here. We'll get killed if we take our eyes off the screen. Then I said, oh, yeah. They'll kill you only if you take your eyes off the screen, but we got to give it a shot. Pardon the expression. So I said, take my hand. I said, Barbara, step out into the aisle. Don't take your eyes off the screen. So we step out into the aisle. I said, now walk backwards. And I start walking backwards, and I'm looking at the screen. And I see the guards turn toward us with their rifles, and they said, oh, no, well, he's still looking at the screen. We don't have to shoot him. They didn't care that I was walking backwards out of the theater. It was just that they were automatons. If you take your eye off the screen, kill them. So I knew that. So I walk back. We go through the doors backwards, and we think we're out. So then we try to get out of the theater, but the theater was chained shut. I could see the chains locking the doors on the outside. And I said, we got to get out. We got to find another way out. So I took her, and we went up to the mezzanine level, and I saw a window, and I threw open the window, and there was a 50-foot drop into a torrential, roaring Swiss mountain river. And I said, look, we're dead either way. We've got to take the chance. Let's go for it. Let's jump. So I took her hand. We both jumped. We plunged through the water. You know, and I could feel it. Then I looked up, and I could see the sunlight shining through the water. And I'm swimming up with one arm up, swimming and pulling her up, and broke through the water into the sunlight. And I woke up, and I go, what the hell was that dream all about? That is amazing. What is this? What's this film that fooled the world? So I got up. That was that morning. I went, and I took the plane. I flew around the Matterhorn and crossed around mountain passes, and I learned how to do mountain flying from an old Swiss pilot. And I pondered, what the heck was that about? Well, make a long story short, 2 years later, I discovered the film that fooled the world. And that film is the Zapruder film.
Oh.
Optical illusion, a consciously engineered mass hallucination.
I had a vision that you were going to say that. That was pretty trippy there, young man.
Thank you.
I knew you were going to say that. That was
kind of fun. That's the psychic element at work, you know. When I call this thing the ring of truth, you know.
Well, that just happened in real. That was kind of creepy because it just happened in real time, live on the radio. That was kind of weird.
That's the best witness.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I'm kind of creeped out right now. Kind of freaked out.
It shouldn't be, because that's just your soul working. We have been deceived. Our egos are easily deceived. And what I'm doing, and thousands of others are doing, and that's why I'm so happy. You know what? Can I tell you something really odd? This is the first happy anniversary that I've had at the JFK assassination. And the reason that I'm happy is that at last, the mind control apparatus that kept everyone dumbed down in the dark has been broken. Thousands of people have worked for 51 years to mine, data mining information, pulling out little hidden facts, details. And we have the big picture now, and the majority of the American people do not accept that Lee Harvey Oswald killed President Kennedy or a single gunman, and nobody believes, very few people believe that the Zapruder film is real, because it's not.
If I bought the Zapruder film right now, the original, and I took it out of its box and I examined it, is it spliced? How much is missing?
It's a 50-foot roll, and at least 10 feet are missing. You know, I did this the other night on Jeff's show. And I'd like to do it with you now. I'd like to explain how the Zapruder film was doctored and why. Okay, President Kennedy was hit by at least 5 shots, 5 solid shots and glancing shots, which would require 6 fingers on my hand. So let's just work with 5. Okay. Now I want everyone to look at their hands. Spread your fingers wide apart, and your 5 fingers are the 5 shots that hit him, okay? Now, I want you to imagine that you scotch tape your thumb to your index, to your middle, to your ring, to your pinky, and you now have a piece of scotch tape gluing your 5 fingers that are spread apart, okay? That scotch tape represents the Zapruder film, which is supposed to be 18 frames for every second of time that occurred.
Gotcha. So there's a space in between.
Right, that's the space between the arrival of the shots.
Gotcha.
Now, the car never went faster than 11.2 or 11.4 miles an hour. But just to round it out, let's just say it went 12 miles an hour. But what we see in the Zapruder film is a car moving at about 35 miles an hour. The car also stopped twice, once by the sign and once at the grassy knoll.
That's right.
Okay? But you never see the stop of the car at the sign or at the grassy knoll. How did they do that? Okay, here's what happened. They needed to take a film that showed the president getting hit at least 5 times and reduce it to 2 shots. One that hit the president and one that killed the president, one that hit the president and wounded Connolly, all right? Now, behind the sign, 2 things happened. The fusillade, this is what it was. It was a fusillade. Everyone who heard the shots, plural, described it almost in the same words. Most of the people said they thought they heard firecrackers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ever heard firecrackers, it doesn't go crack. It goes...
Right.
Okay? So what I'm saying is, yes, 3 sounds, 3 pulses, 3 times of multiple gunmen all shooting on cue, all shooting 1 shot at the same time that sounded like firecrackers or shots with echoes.
Sure.
Okay? So now we have this scenario. The car, as it passed behind the sign, President Kennedy was shot first in the back, about 8 inches down from the neck between the shoulder blades into one of the boniest parts of the human body. The thoracic vertebra are some of the thickest, densest bones in the human body. The bullet would descend at a 40-degree angle into his back. The president was startled. He jumped up and he said, "Oh my God, I've been shot." And the Secret Servicemen heard that. They testified to that before the Warren Commission. Instantly, after the back shot, he was shot in the throat. So 2 shots happened behind the sign. Okay? The car delayed behind the sign. So if Zapruder was filming and the car came behind the sign, and actually this did happen, he followed the car behind the sign, expected it to come out, overshot the film, and then went back to the sign. And during that moment of time, Zapruder told the Warren Commission that he saw the president's head pop up from behind the sign.
That's
They
correct.
said, no, that's not possible. He was hidden by the sign.
Right.
Zapruder said, no, I saw his head pop up behind the sign. He stood up. And they said, oh, no. He said, I saw his red hair. He stood up. And then they let it go, right? Now, 2 shots were fired, and the car stopped. Several feet of film were run, because Zapruder shot the film in slow motion. The film was being shot at 24 frames per second. It's been reduced to 18 frames per second, which means that for every 2 frames you see, 1 has been taken out. Anyway, they cut the film, and they removed the stop, and they removed the sight of President Kennedy's head popping up above the sign when he stood up and said, oh my God, I've been shot. So they cut the film and joined it. Join your 2 fingers together.
Right.
Your index finger and your thumb. There, they took 2 shots, 2 separate events, removed the intermittent time and intervening time, and they turned 2 shots into 1. The car continued. When it got to the grassy knoll, the president was riddled by quadrangulation. It wasn't triangulation. It was quadrangulation. And he was hit with 2 shooters on the grassy knoll. One from the right front hit him in the forehead with an explosive bullet, a sabot shell with a mercury fulminate. Exploded. The head opened up in the front. Instantly, the one they call Badge Man, or the shooter on the grassy knoll picket fence, fired into the open hole and took out the back of his head. His head was ripped apart. Instantly, Jackie embraced him, almost as if to protect him. All her arm movements have been taken out. And then he was hit 2 more times. And it was then that she saw the piece of skull fly off.
Right.
She instinctively reached for it, and she turned very naturally. She turned in her seat onto her knees, and she crawled out. Now, what has been removed now we have the 3 fingers left, the grassy knoll. They were 4 shots, but let's just use 3 fingers.
Right.
The explosive bullet hit, boom. Then the second one went through the open wound about a second later, and then at the end of the fusillade. So by removing the time between the arrival of the first 2 bullets, you have now reduced that shot to another shot. So you had 2 shots that were reduced to 1 by the editing of the film behind the sign.
Right.
The back shot and the throat shot is 1 shot.
Right.
And now you have the grassy knoll shot where 2 shots hit him, but the space between them has been removed. And then the 3rd shots and 4th shots finished him off. They have been removed. So what happens? I would like everybody, if you indulge me, you're home right now, nobody's going to see you. Imagine you're Jackie Kennedy, and you're sitting in the car next to the president, and you hear these terrible gurgling sounds as she described them, and she sees that her husband is having trouble. He doesn't look right. She sidled across the seat from the far side of the left. She crossed over, and she put her arm around his shoulders, like, Jack, what's wrong?
Right.
Bagging, right? That instant, the explosive shot hits. And she winces. She closes her eyes as this jet of, vertical jet, by the way, of matter shoots straight up into the air and splatters her. And she opens her eyes, and she sees he's wounded. And she then embraces him completely with 2 arms. So she broke away. She put one arm around him, then the shot, and she broke away, and her arms broke off. And then she sees him, he's in grave distress, and she embraces him with 2 arms protectively and looks like, who's hurting my husband?
Right.
And then 2 more shots hit him again. The top of his head goes flying off.
Right.
Literally, like a toupee.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It flips back. Yeah.
And she sees his head deflate like a balloon, and then she sees the piece go off, and she makes a reaction to get that piece. Now, imagine, folks, just humor me for a moment. Extend your right arm, you've put it around Jack. You retract your right arm, and you're aghast at the explosion. Then you reach and you hug him with 2 arms, and then the end comes, and you release him. Okay. Imagine what your body would look like if your arm movements, extensions, and retractions were removed. You would see your body would move forward and stop, and then move back,
and then move forward and move back.
Oh, I've got
And
you.
you look-
Yes.
Person in tremors. It's like, oh, shock. Wah.
Yes.
Shaking. That's what's been done in the Zapruder film. And the only hero in Dealey Plaza, Jackie Kennedy, has been made look like a panic-stricken coward. She was a lioness. She was the only hero in Dealey Plaza that day. Forget Clint Hill. He's been hiding the facts, too.
Well, I've always thought, I've watched the Zapruder film, 1,000 times.
Exactly.
And I went through a period back, I'm going to say the mid-2000s, where I went through a Zapruder film addiction. For about a week, I was watching it all day long, and it was really polluting my emotions in a bad way.
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
Well, yes. But what I did, but what I noticed, Robert,
yes,
and I attributed it to being an old camera, old technology, maybe not clean, whatever. But you can tell that there are jumps in the film.
Absolutely,
you can see it. You can see it.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you how it happened. You see, I studied Gestalt psychology, which is basically the psychology of human perception, which is how humans form an idea. We organize visual information geometrically. You walk into a room, and your brain, as your upbringing has taught you, create a horizon, you have vertical reference like a cross, and then you start to compartmentalize within that matrix the relevant, important information to your current experience, which is generally survival, You walk into a room, even a room, the first thing is safety. So you pick up anything that's dangerous to you, and then you feel comfortable. Then you pick up things that are ornamental or whatever. But movie film works on us. Movie film is an illusion. We see a movie, but it really is just still pictures.
That's right.
That are running concatenated in a certain sequence at a certain speed.
And we fill in the blanks. We fill in the blanks.
That's right, filling in the blanks. But that works because of the five phenomenon. And if you go into Wikipedia, for example, and do Gestalt psychology and look up five phenomena, you'll see how this organic rate of movement and the expression of the golden mean makes it possible for that illusion to work. Well, what they did in the Zapruder film is they understood those principles of human perception, and by reversing them, re-engineering the film, they have fooled the film that has fooled the world, has fooled people for 51 years. And here's part of the foolishness. The first three motorcycles that you see in the Zapruder film were not part of the presidential motorcade. They were part of the motorcade, but they were not the guards, the entourage of the president's limousine. Those three motorcycles, there's actually four because one goes down Houston Street in the other direction, and three come down. As your eye is following the third motorcycle right in front of you, the film is cut, and your eye jumps to the next most similar object, which is another motorcycle, a motorcycle policeman who is with the president's entourage. But in that moment, when they tricked you into looking at the faux motorcycle, one of the first three, they cut the film and your eye naturally follows the motorcycle. But it's not the same motorcycle you were looking at. But in that instant, when you were focused on that motorcycle, the car has appeared right in the middle of the street, and your eye has been tricked into believing that you saw the car turn the corner. You never see the car turn the corner.
Mm-hmm.
The car proceeds. Something else happened. Something happened around 155, 156, because I found the film is cut and spliced, and a frame fragment is inserted again to make it look smooth as if it didn't slow.
Interesting.
Then we come to we come to the sign. And at the sign, the numbering of the frames goes Z205, 206, 207, Z212, Z213. Hey, what? Oh, we lost 5 frames. Some inexperienced junior technician was working the film, and he damaged it. We lost 5 frames. 5 feet is more like it, because Zapruder was shooting in slow motion. So they cut out, my estimate is 5 feet of film, and they rejoined the film, but in no ordinary manner. They inserted a frame fragment that was cut in the phi proportion, which is 1 to 1.618.
Well, 5 feet of film that's seconds.
That is many seconds.
That's many seconds. Yes, that's not not a portion of a flick of anything. 5 feet of film at any frame rate, even high speed, is a lot of time.
It is. It's 5 feet. That's what I'm saying. It's a 50-foot roll, 25 feet on either side. And my estimate is that the time it took for the car to stop in front of the sign, the president to jump up and fall back down, struggling, because he not only fell back down, he fell past the seat into the floor well,
right,
and had to work himself back up. Now, here's a fascinating thing that I just discovered last week. Dan Rather got to see the original film before it was really radically modified. They had 5 years of time to work on the film because it wasn't shown between 1963 and 1968 when CBS showed it once on CBS News, and not the whole thing, just up to the part before the headshot.
Right.
That's part of the cover-up. The film was altered, but CBS didn't have the guts to show the alteration because it's kind of obvious. The cut is right through the back of the sign, but the interesting thing is the insertion of this frame fragment, which creates the illusion that the car did not stop. And the way that it creates the illusion is that while your eye is following the limousine and the sign and expecting the limousine to come out, the frame fragment is inserted, and the buildings in the background stay for the first frame while the bottom of the next frame changes, and the car jumps out from behind the sign.
Right, it allows a continuous flow.
Right, and in the next frame, the building and the tree trunk, the tree is literally cut in half. Half of it is standing, and half of it's over the other side of it. Then it joins. And in those 2/18ths of a second, they fooled the world. They fooled me, but they didn't fool me completely, because when CBS showed it that first time around 68, I was watching and I thought I blinked. I've told the story a lot, and this is really the key to the whole thing. I was concentrating intently on this, and I blinked at a critical moment, and I missed something. I said, what happened there? I blinked. Oh, God. All right, let's watch it at 11. There's going to be a rerun. So at 11 o'clock, now I'm really concentrating.
Yeah, right.
And holy mackerel, I blinked again.
Right.
And I smacked myself, figuratively speaking, saying, Robert, how could you do that?
Right. You were ready the second time.
I was ready the second time, but how could I blink at the same precise moment? And I realized something's wrong here, and I walked away from that with a churning feeling in my stomach and confusion, and something's wrong, and how could I possibly do that? How stupid can that be? And you know what? I was really straining to keep my eyes open after having blinked, so there's that. So to make a long story short, 30 years later, I found that copy of the Zapruder film that had been shown that night in a PBS special, where they bought the documentary from CBS and they used it on PBS, and Walter Cronkite was narrating, and I'm watching the film, and you know what they did? They inserted a completely black frame, totally black, for 1/30th of a second. And that's what made me think I blinked.
Because it looks like a blink. It looks like a blink. It looks like
everything goes black.
Yeah, it looks like a blink. Absolutely.
You blink. But imagine 80 million people, let's say, were watching that night, or 40 million people were watching that night, and they all blinked. But nobody says, hey, Joe, did you blink? Yeah, Jim, I blinked. Did you blink too? Nobody says that. Only Robert said to himself, hey, man, I blinked at 7 o'clock at the same part. I blinked at 11. That doesn't make any sense to me. That was the first fooling that it pulled on me.
I went through the same thing when I went through my Zapruder addiction. I'd watched it so many times, and I keep seeing these blips, right? And I was forcing. I'm just wondering, am I missing? What am I doing to myself?
Yeah.
And I was forcing myself to keep my eyes open, and that's when I started to notice the jumps in the film. But I attributed it to I didn't think it was altered. I thought that we were always looking at the Zapruder film in its totality.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, I thought it was, issues with the camera because it's old,
Yes, but also there was a lot of cover stories about that. For the jumps, for example, that you noticed, they came up with the story of jiggle analysis. And you know what? One of the big cover-up artists in this is a Nobel Prize winning physicist, Dr. Luis Alvarez, the guy who found the iridium layer.
Yeah.
He was the foremost expert in photography, cinematography for Kodak, and he had been working for the CIA since 1951 when he was a member of the Robertson panel. Remember the UFO flap in Washington and the Robertson Panel Commission?
Yep.
He was a member of that. And he asked through Dr. Robertson that his relationship with the CIA not be divulged to the public, that only his professional credentials as photo expert from Kodak be listed in his bio for the Robertson Commission, because he didn't want the public to know that he worked for the CIA.
How many times have you been to Dealey Plaza?
6 times.
Okay.
9 times. 3 days each time. It was
Okay.
94, 96, and 98.
Okay.
And it was in 96 when I stood up where Zapruder was shooting his film, and I panned with my fingers, making a frame, and I was panning the traffic on coming down Elm Street, and the cars were doing 20 miles an hour, and my hands were moving really slowly, and I go, wait a second.
I did the same thing. Look, I said this last week or on the anniversary. I said the exact same thing.
Uh-huh.
I stood where Zapruder was. I stood right there. But the thing that, and I want you to confirm what I said to everybody a couple of weeks ago, which is this: Dealey Plaza is friggin' small.
Very small place.
Exactly. And it is like anybody's front and backyard at your house. Okay, that's what we're dealing with here. It's not large. And the book depository is right there on top of this small lawn. It's small. The bridge is right there. The grassy knoll and that tree and that fence, it's all in your face. So that is one of the things that I need everybody to understand when you're looking at the Zapruder film and you're looking at this and you're picturing it in your own mind's eye. You have to picture a postage stamp. I mean, we're talking about a very, very, very small area. Mm-hmm. And when I did,
looks big in film.
It looks big in film. That's right. And
the distances are very, very close from the picket fence or the pergola porch to the road is, I would say, the distance from home plate to the pitcher's mound.
Yeah, that's what exactly how I described it.
Fish in a barrel, you might say.
Right, and so I want to hit you with this question.
Go ahead.
With as tiny as of an area as that is, we're talking about the President of the United States, Secret Service, Dallas Police Force, everything that's there. How could they not know exactly what the hell happened that morning? There's just it's all in your face. Everybody there knew exactly where everything came from, where the shots came from, who ran, who didn't run, who ducked, who did not duck. That's the part where I just call BS on everything for them not to know exactly what happened. It's way too small of an area, and it aggravates me, Robert. Aggravates me.
People think, they have the wrong concept of it but let me say this about your reaction, your emotional reaction, and so it's intended to do that to you. It's intended to brain mess you. That's a very genteel phrase for another phrase in our argot. It's intended to brain mess you, and it's to confuse you and to induce a state that's called cognitive dissonance. And this is the state that I went into. That's when your brain is presented with two contradictory pieces of information, and both of them presented as truth. Your brain gets stunted, it gets shocked. It does not compute. You know what I mean? And that is the intention of the Zapruder film. That is the intention of the autopsy photos. It's to mess up your mind. I call the Zapruder film the greatest example of mass mind control that the world has ever known. And my dream rightly labeled it as the film that fooled the world. It's still fooling a few people, but not many anymore. It's got missing time. It's actually, to be honest with you, it's actually like dosing somebody with LSD. It's a hallucination.
It is, and it kept doing that to me.
Yeah, and it's intentional. This is the product of MK Ultra, the mind control apparatus of the Central Intelligence Agency. Was enlisted to make sure that between Friday and Monday, the idea of a single gunman and 3 shots was cemented in our minds, which leads me to Dan Rather's viewing of the Zapruder film before it was completely altered. On Monday, November 25th, the day that President Kennedy was buried, he was allowed to see the film. And he did 3 reports on CBS describing what he saw. And I saw them last week before I did the show that I referred to earlier. And I was amazed that Dan Rather mimics what he saw in the Zapruder film. He seems almost mesmerized, hypnotized, and in shock, all 3 of them. And he makes a point saying Governor Connolly's suit jacket was open. And he turned around like this, and he mimics. And go to YouTube and look up Dan Rather's first CBS report, second CBS report, and third CBS report. And each time he does the same gesture, and he imitates Governor Connolly's movements, which he says, Governor Connolly turned around completely, or nearly completely, in the chair when he seemed to sense the shot or something. And he turns around, and then Dan Rather does this. Put your finger on your belly button, or the button of your suit, where the suit jacket is open, he says. And he says, and then Governor Connolly's arm went out like this, and he reaches back, and he extends his arm fully back. And he says, as if trying to help the president or something. And then he was shot. And then he says, and then the third, and then he fell over into Mrs. Connolly's lap. And then the third shot came, and that one killed the president. He didn't know. He was pitching the 3-shot scenario. This
That's
was
right.
important to the cover-up, so he did that. And he unwittingly let out that Governor Connolly went down before President Kennedy's headshot. So he was shot by the second bullet. He had it as the first bullet hit the president, the second bullet hit Connolly, the third bullet hit the president. There was no magic bullet yet that Monday morning.
That's right. But
in each instance, in each reiteration, the gesture is the important thing. He does it and kind of slowly reaches his arm and extends it fully back. Imagine you're in a movie theater and you reach back to somebody and you're handing them the bag of popcorn.
Right.
That's the kind of gesture that he does.
That's exactly what he does. Right.
When I saw it the third time, I said, oh my God, holy mackerel. You know what I just realized? He's hypnotized. He's mesmerized. He's in shock. And he is imitating what he saw. The important thing is this. He's imitating a movement that is not seen in the Zapruder film at all, but the speed at which he was imitating the movement that he had seen was the slow motion version that Zapruder said he shot.
You know what? I'm going to say this, and then we're going to change. We're going to go to Dyatlov Pass, if you don't mind. We're going to.
Oh, sure.
I'm going to keep you for an extra 15 minutes tonight. But this is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We're talking with Robert Morningstar. Robert, I'm going to leave you with this, and this is how I feel with the Zapruder film. And I know this is dark, but the only person that was surprised in that was Jackie. Okay, everybody else's reactions and Connolly and everybody else just seemed like they were going through the motions. Like,
oh yeah,
that's my take, and all of America can hate me, but go watch the film, and that's how I feel. there was no shock there. It was only her. Everybody else just seemed like, man, it's about time. Man, they were a little late. That's the way it feels to me. Okay, let's move to Dyatlov Pass. Can I keep you for an extra 15 minutes here?
Sure, I'm here as long as you want.
Okay. Dyatlov Pass and Gagarin,
yes.
When you I'm going to have you share your research. I'm going to set this up really quick because we're almost out of time.
Okay.
When he did his orbit of the Earth,
yes.
Dyatlov Pass is going down at the same time. Now, which is something that nobody talks. You were the first person, and you really opened up my eyes to this. It was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's like so obvious.
Now it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Now, Gagarin, when he came back to Earth, he didn't land in the dirt. He ejected, and he cruised down to Earth in a parachute, which a lot of people also don't understand. Which took stones of brass to do that.
I admire him greatly. He was listen. We have to tip our hat to the Russians' achievements in outer space. And Yuri Gagarin is a singular human being in human history. He is the first human in recorded history to have entered and gone into outer space. And that can never be taken away from him.
No, can you imagine at 23,000 feet, you're coming back, you're the first guy, and you crack open the hatch and just jump out?
And the photos in that compendium, I was very lucky. Again, here's, remember what I said, God works through Google. I've been interested in the Dyatlov Pass story since I saw or heard Paul Stonehill tell the story. He wrote a book called Soviet UFOs, and he's the, I would consider him the world's expert on Russian ufology.
Great
he
book.
Was born in Russia. His name's Paul Stone. He lives in England. Great book. But the Dyatlov story was just so gripping when I first heard him tell it. And then I was going through YouTube, and I saw the Yuri Gagarin's collection of UFO photos and the Dyatlov Pass incident. So I go, get out of here, The skeptic, like, Yuri Gagarin? Well, what's that? So I started looking at it, and a man named Debra Malko had put together this really wonderful documentary. It's actually a book on YouTube that he shot photographs of the typewritten translations of the Dyatlov incident report by the KGB. But with it, he did a documentary utilizing the personal collection of UFO photographs collected by Yuri Gagarin. And suddenly I realized that one of the pictures was taken from outer space. And it was a picture of this mountain, Mount Orten, where this tragedy, this disaster happened. 9 hikers died horrible deaths, terribly mutilated, in an incident that was seen by other hikers 33 miles away on another mountain. They saw UFO activities and lights illuminating the valley in the middle of the night, and the 9 hikers died terrible deaths. They were irradiated. Their skin sometimes looks mummified. Their bodies were crushed internally. The skeletons were broken in really unusual ways, skulls crushed, eyes removed, tongue removed, burns, and inexplicable. The KGB said that they had succumbed to some irresistible force. They weren't even able to label it. But I collected the photos in this way. I didn't have a YouTube downloader at the time, so I shot the photos in Yuri Gagarin's collection off my monitor screen. And in the process of going through those photographs, I realized that these people had taken several photographs of the UFO that was stalking them. I have 3 photographs that show activity by a river, people running excitedly. 2 are staring in one direction, one woman's running away. One guy's got his face and body just turned away from this completely, and in the background is a white silhouette of a UFO, maybe 1/4 quarter mile beyond them in the forest. And then there was a photograph of the mountain taken in daytime, which is a snowscape. There were about 2 feet, 4 feet of snow in the area already. Another meter or 12 feet fell after the incident happened. But one guy took a picture of the mountain, and I looked at it, and I go, well, that's really odd. You know, that mountain has a bald patch on it.
Yeah, it was February in Russia, which means, 100 feet of snow every. Yeah, exactly.
But I look at this mountain, and I look at it, and I see a bald spot. And I thought of it, when you go by mountain skiing areas, you see the whole mountain, but the ski run is denuded, right? It's no trees, right? It's just blank, and you see the cabling of the ski lift and whatnot. But this is Russia in 1959. There's no skiing up there. And I look at it, it's like, that doesn't make sense. So I took the photograph, I enlarged it, I enhanced it, and the bald spot was a UFO. A UFO of the most unique design, not a perfectly circular or even oval disc, but a sort of a 5-sided arrowhead planform with faceted sides and a dome. And then Gagarin had other photos in his collection that are shown in this, and one of them was of a massive UFO flyover, the Plesetsk Cosmodrome, their Cape Kennedy, where he was launched. And there are 4 or 5 UFOs hanging around the whole complex with this tube-like, snake-like UFO floating around one of the towers. And one of those UFOs is the same type as the one that, and I'll tell you, as the one that killed the 9 Dyatlov Pass hikers. And there's also another very strange photo that one of the hikers took, which looks like some kind of a yeti or a wild man coming after them in very deep snow, like snow up to the top of the thighs. So this collection was really an amazing thing to stumble upon. So I wrote this article. I was very deeply touched by their stories. The photographs are very compelling, all of them together. These young people were the cream of the crop of the Russian educational system. They were all, high-level students in a polytechnical institute, and they were very skilled in Nordic skiing and hiking, and their deaths were ghastly.
Yeah, totally.
It was a tragedy. When you see the photos of the funeral, the sadness of the Russian people is palpable in these photos, and it's touched me.
So how do you think Gagarin took the picture? And why? And why? That's the other thing.
I think that, like the missions to the moon, as I said, were veiled as scientific missions, but really spy missions. I feel that Gagarin's launch, yes, it was a huge propaganda mission to be the first man in space, but, the Ruskies, they're really smart cookies, as I say, diabolical smart cookies, but they have a purpose in everything they did, and I believe that where he came down the flyover was over that region. He flew over it and took pictures of it so they could observe it from outer space and see what's on top of that mountain. And if you saw my article, it has some really unique features, almost like a cross in a circle in one area, and another one, I swear to God, it looks like a big footprint seen from outer space.
Interesting. And what was the tip-off with your research into this? What was the tip-off that this activity was going to be going on? I mean, planning a space flight like this at that exact same time, he was only up there for how long? An hour, hour and a half, 2 hours?
About 1 hour and 47 minutes,
right.
1 hour and 42. But the event happened on February 2nd of 1959, and then the next year, that's when Gagarin went up. But when I looked at his flight path, the launch site and the landing, I said, oh my God, this looks like it was intended as a mission to, well, I still have the photographs,
Mm-hmm.
But here's the interesting part. In the photograph, there's a very dark area. The mountain is in, the sunlight is coming from the top of the picture, and so it's casting a big shadow into the valley. And recently I found a big white spot in the middle of the blackness, and they may have actually captured one of those UFOs in flight over Mount Orten. Let me tell you, the audience, this mountain called Mount Orten, the natives there have a name for it, and the name of the mountain is Do Not Go There.
Yeah,
mountain.
Go back.
Do not go there.
Do not go. Do not pass. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is it. And I am going to follow up because I did not get a chance to finish it's probably going to be 3 parts, but I've been working on it. And since that time, I found those other 2 photographs. There is in the story, if you go to UFO Digest and find it, Dyatlov Pass, a case of UFO mass murder in the Urals. It's called UFO Mass Murder in the Urals, 1959. I found 2 other pictures that I referred to. In the article that is there's something called Frame 33. It was the last photograph taken by one of the victims. And when the photo was developed, the last photograph shows this streak of white light. And I thought of it. I thought, could that be the moon? You know, it's so bright in the middle of the night. And if somebody shot a picture and they were shaky and moved it, the moon could leave a streak like that. So I said, I wonder if that's the moon. It's totally black except for this white cloud on the left side of the picture. So I did my enhancement technique on it, and I bring up the gamma, bring up the brightness, and hit my quotient there for the contrast, and I go bing, and all of a sudden the silhouette of the mountain appeared out of the black, and the moon appears in the background. So the object was not the moon. It was the UFO racing down on this poor soul who turned around and said, Pink, I'm going to take a picture. It's the last picture I take. It's called Frame 33. And here's the other curious part. I gave complete credit to Mr. D. Ramalko, who got the pictures from Gagarin's family. I wrote it as my tribute to Yuri Gagarin, who, strangely enough, when he got into outer space, he said, I'm an eagle. He didn't say I'm a bear.
Right.
And I thought that was very important for us as Americans. They used a little hint there.
You know, before I let you go, we've only got a few minutes left, and I can't wait to get you back on. So the invitation is always open, and let's get that out of the way now. Have you ever seen a UFO?
Yes.
And tell me about that.
I have had several close encounters, and the one I like, I have had them on the ground, and I've had them in the air. The one I had in the air happened in March 1990, and I actually went into flying. You know, I got my pilot's license because I said to myself, you know, if you're ever going to see something like that, it's really greater likelihood it's going to happen if you're going in the air.
Sure.
So I was doing a solo from MacArthur Airport in Long Island to Albany, New York, and then to Pennsylvania. And I'd just taken off, and at about 10:30 in the morning, it was hazy. I'm near the Port Jefferson stacks, these giant smokestacks from a power plant that we use as a reporting point when we're leaving or approaching the airport. And I see to my left side, at my 10 o'clock low, I see 2 crafts coming up out of the haze, and they're moving very smoothly and in unison. And I called air traffic control and said, I have traffic. I'm under air traffic control from MacArthur, and we're supposed to have warnings and separation, and we're supposed to be told when there's traffic around. So
of course.
MacArthur Airport, MacArthur Towers, Cessna so-and-so. I have some traffic at my 10 o'clock and climbing, and they said, well, we don't see them. They may be too low for our radar. And I said to myself, but you know what? I'm in a terminal control area, and everybody's supposed to have a transponder. That's a radar signal that the airplane sends out. So instead of you waiting for their beam to hit the airplane and go back to the airport, you have a radar in your aircraft that's sending a radar signal intentionally with your number. You're given an identification number each time. So those guys should have had transponders, so they should have been visible. So they're climbing up, and all of a sudden I see they're not airplanes. They're two eggs.
What?
They were two eggs, egg-shaped UFOs. And you know how I describe it? Again, with the hands. This is a really great way to do it. Take your right hand and split your index and middle finger into the V sign. Just imagine the tips of your fingers are two egg-shaped craft. And they're down on your left side low, below your elbow, and they rise past your nose. And then you go by them, and you see them from the tail as you fly by them. I had that view of two egg-shaped UFOs.
Wow.
No wings, no props, no tails, no rudders, a little cupola.
How big? How big do you think?
They were about the size of the Cessna aircraft that I was flying, so I would say about 28 to 30 feet.
28, 30 feet, and how far away?
Oh, man, these guys passed close, and it was a good long observation. When they passed across they rose to my altitude, which was at that point 2,000 feet. They went right past the nose of my plane, and I would say I was closing at about 100 miles an hour in my climb out, and we crossed a T, literally crossing the T at... They were, since I was doing 100 miles an hour, it was between 300 and 200 feet.
And did you call back to air traffic control?
I never do that. I called them back. I called back to MacArthur. I said, traffic crossing across the nose of my plane now, traffic crossing Long Island Sound, traffic out of sight. I'm not going to say UFOs. What do? You get yourself in trouble.
Right.
You get ridiculed. They call you in, and they want to take your license away. I would never report a UFO to the FAA, to air traffic control, unless it was a dangerous situation, or to the police. They're incapable of doing anything, and they don't want to be bothered.
You know what I want to do with you, Robert? You had asked me to take phone calls earlier today, and I said, yeah, it's my favorite thing to do. Let's do that. We didn't do that tonight. I want to bring you back on one of our open line nights and just bang phone calls one after another. Would you do that for us?
Absolutely. There's nothing I enjoy more than speaking to people who are interested in what I have to say or have questions or comments. It's really a very rich part of radio.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, one last question. This comes in from Steve, and give me your 2-minute answer on this. He wants to know if Sun Tzu had any ET influence when he wrote The Art of War.
I believe that Sun Tzu and Chuan Tzu and Lao Tzu all had extraterrestrial contact. Without a doubt. Lao Tzu is a very strange guy. They say that, Lao Tzu was not born as like an ordinary human being. They say, the legend says, Lao Tzu was gestated in his mother's spine for years, and then he was born out of her spine. That's very strange. That sounds like an implant to me.
Right.
Chuan Tzu was a very mystical person, but I'd like to leave you with this thing. Chang'e, the name of the Chinese satellite?
Oh, the Chinese lander? Sure.
Chang'e was a Chinese princess who discovered the pill of immortality and actually levitation, and she was only supposed to eat a half of it, share with her husband, but she was afraid of getting caught, so she ate the whole thing. And she started to float, and she floated out. And the story is that a 6-foot-tall Chinese gray rabbit abducted her and took her to the moon. And when the Apollo 11 craft was going
that's right.
They said to them, hey, we just got a message here. We'd like you to keep an eye out for a Chinese princess. I go, what? Oh, yeah, her name is Chang'e. She was abducted, thousands of years ago by a 6-foot gray rabbit and taken to the moon. So if you see her, keep an eye out for her and let us know.
I always wondered about that. I never made the connection.
That's how long I've known about Chang'e. Now, let's leave that for the alien Mona Lisa. The alien body?
Yes, you are the best.
I don't think it came back on Apollo 20 because I think that's a bogus cover story. I think another Apollo mission brought her back.
Robert Morningstar. Okay, you've got 60 seconds. What are you doing next? What are you speaking? What are you doing right now?
Next, I'm finishing off this video and looking forward to next year and going around and revealing the film that fooled the world, because I did find the missing frames, and that's why I was able to tell you about Jackie's heroic movements and how she is one of the most defamed person, to make her look like a panic-stricken woman with cowardly instincts.
Absolutely.
She's one of the greatest people.
Certainly. Thank you so much. And we're going to bring you on next month after the holidays. I'm going to bring you on for an open lines night, and let's just do 3 hours of phone calls.
Thank you. They love to do it.
So much. Thank you, Robert.
Have a great Merry Christmas and wonderful holidays, and keep the faith. Things are really getting good. We're in the middle of the great American Revolution of the 21st century. I really feel that right into the gut and the bones, and I'm happy, and I hope to share that happiness with you.
Be safe out there. Thank you so much. Robert Morningstar, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
UFOdigest.com. Robert Morningstar. Look, there's a live show after us tonight. I would love to have continued on, but I just wouldn't do that to whoever's up next. That is not cool, but wow. And I try to get as much in there as I can. Thank you so much, Robert Morningstar. All of his stuff, you go over to UFOdigest.com. I was searching for everything while he was doing during the conversation tonight. Everything is right there. Just go to UFOdigest.com, and it's right there. Also, you can go to his Facebook page, too, Robert Morningstar. There's a dolphin there. You'll know it when you're there. Go friend him. He is one of the greatest. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Robert Morningstar. Wow. Tomorrow night, don't forget, Laird Scranton will be with us. Stay tuned. Coming up next, Skywatchers Radio. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Faded Black's executive producers, Rita Kamarian. Shows produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. Special thanks to LJ3, Renee, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Viteau, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster. Method. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro by Spaceboy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. Thank you. Robert Morningstar tomorrow night. Laird Scranton. Everybody be safe. See ya.